start off with disclosures of pecuniary interest. Councillor Wing.
I just wanted to note that in the budget under Transportation Transit Brock funding agreement, the agreement with Brock University Students Union, my daughter's a student there and avails herself of that agreement. So I just wanted to note that page 235 where it shows up, I have a conflict on that item.
Okay, fair enough. Any other Councillor Iannone?
I had a conflict on the in-camera item.
Okay, Councillor Iannone on the in-camera item. Any other conflicts? Okay, seeing none, we'll move along. Reports, I would just like to ask the clerk to comment before we start this part.
Your Worship, all the reports tonight are listed in the consent agenda. The one report, though, that I draw your attention to is the planning report, PD 2011-03, the official plan amendment number 94, growth plan conformity. In your additions, you have some emails from Mr. Darbison, planner, and Mr. McFarlane, solicitor for Fernando Pingu, property owner in the city. They're requesting deferral of policies 8.8 to 8.83 as they relate to Mr. Pingu's property at 6690 Montrose Road. And the email from Mr. Barnsley from planning indicates that staff is not opposed to that deferral. So when you consider that report, if I would ask that you consider that with the deferral included.
Okay, we got Councillor Thompson and then Councillor Pietrangelo.
Anyway, I would move deferral of that. We've been dealing with this property for I don't know how many years, and the last time I thought that we dealt with it, we were interested in making it residential, and in fact, the neighboring properties who thought it may be industrial actually showed up in opposition, suggesting that it should be residential. And I believe that's what Mr. Pingu was interested in happening at this time. So I would move deferral, and I've had an opportunity to talk with the planner for a minute. There's residential all around it. It's consistent with the environment in the area, and I think we'll probably be dealing with that specifically, but we'll defer it if we have to have a report. Certainly I'm in favor of the residential component, as the people were previous to that. And it's nice to see that the former planner who was here at the time has now changed his mind about it. He's in favor of residential rather than industrial. So that's a very positive aspect of it also.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconded by Councillor Iannone. Oh, I'm sorry, we had Councillor Pietrangelo.
Actually, and I want to speak to it before I seconded it.
Okay, well, just 1 second. I had Councillor Pietrangelo.
Why don't you ask them to speak to it before getting the seconder deferral?
Yes.
Oh, right, yeah, good idea, good point. Okay, I had Councillor Pietrangelo then, and then Councillor Iannone.
Your Worship, I'm going to support the motion and probably second it as well, but I just wanted to ask whether or not the report can actually be pulled, because I had questions on it as well. Is the deferral only for 6690 Montrose Road?
What is the question?
Is the deferral only for 6690 Montrose Road right now, like that's the motion that's on the floor, or is it to move the report?
Yeah, no, I know there's questions about the strategic plan situation, so I was just zeroing in because this has been mentioned by the clerk. I'm only dealing with the Pingu properties.
Okay, yeah, when the time's right, I'll second the motion, Your Worship.
Okay, Councillor Iannone.
I'm going to talk about it when it comes up.
I'm sorry?
I have the same questions Victor does.
Okay. Once we have the motion for deferral, there's no more discussion or debate. So we just want to make sure if there's any other discussion on it, that we do it before we defer it.
It's just going to defer that property out of the report,
Yes,
correct?
yeah, just the one property.
Okay. So it's moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Iannone. Any other well, there's no discussion. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, thank you. Next up, so we're going to go back to the monthly tax report, I suppose. F 2011-04, moved by Councillor Iannone, seconded by Councillor Carrio. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. PD 2012-13, telecommunication facility consultation, moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Morocco. All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, okay, all those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Okay. Item TS 2011-04, supply of an automated stop announcement system for the transit fleet. Moved by Councillor Ioannoni, seconded by Councillor Pietrangelo. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, it's
They'll be very
unanimous.
happy.
Good. And R and C 2012-02, early approval to update the strategic plan for the province of, or for the provision of parks, recreation, arts, and culture. Councillor Pietrangelo?
Rich, I'm gonna have some questions in this one, so I don't know how you wanna do it. You wanna deal with this one first, or go back to the OPA 94?
Okay, well then why
It
don't
is
we,
a consent agenda, that's why I'm asking, like, I mean, do we have to make a motion to pull it out?
maybe we'll get some advice from the clerk?
We'll just ask to pull it out.
Okay, so we'll pull out the, okay, do you want to make that motion, Councillor? Okay, seconded by
You don't have to make a
Councillor.
motion.
Pardon me?
You don't have to make a motion.
Okay, all right, then we'll just pull it, thank you. All right, Councillor, did you want to,
Are we, agriculture, or do we go back
which
to
one did you
OPA
pull?
94?
Which one did you
Doesn't
pull?
matter.
They're both pulled.
They're both pulled?
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, yes, that's why I said.
okay, let's go with OPA 94 then. Okay, Councillor Pietrangelo.
Yeah, I have a question, Your Worship, and I guess it would be through you to Mr. Hurlovich. On page 3, right around the middle of the page, right, the paragraph on top of Greenfields, it says, the final form of intensification includes policies to allow for secondary apartments in single detached houses. The policies require minimum standards, lot size, parking be included through zoning amendment, either comprehensive or site-specific, to address this provincial interest. I'm just trying to understand, is it something that the province is interested in seeing municipalities pass? Is the fact that two families now can live in a single-family home?
Mr. Hurlovich?
Excuse me, yes, the provincial planning documents basically provide for intensification through a second dwelling unit in any single-family, two-family house in a municipality in Ontario. So we're basically making a provision for that. So what it would do is it would establish policies in the official plan, but each person would then have to apply on a site-specific basis to include a second dwelling in their house, as the zoning bylaws are created now, more or less. We do have an R2 zone that currently permits a duplex dwelling now, so that's already allowed, but for any of the other properties, they would have to apply for a site-specific zoning for their house.
Your Worship, if I could then, the province has already enacted legislation that says that single-family homes can now have two families living in them, provided that the municipalities pass policies relating to them.
That's correct.
Okay. And I guess, Your Worship, my next question is, do we have to pass this policy?
We should. I'm not sure whether, if council chooses to leave it out, I'm not sure that the province wouldn't appeal to insert it, or that the region might not insert it back in to the policy. Basically, we're mandated to comply. It is a provincial policy, so we're to bring our documents into compliance with their document, which is what we're doing now. So in essence, we would be bringing that policy forward as we see fit into this document.
And the reason why someone would have to apply for a special designation, I mean, should this policy be enacted, I can only assume would be because once they applied for that special designation, then that information would be passed on to MPAC, and then obviously because they had an income property inside their own dwelling, their assessment would go up. Would that be the reason why?
Well, there are a number of things. One of the things would be to make sure that it's a safe dwelling unit, so that for fire safety and other reasons, we'd want to make sure that the dwelling unit complies with building code. The second aspect would be that of taxes, so that everybody's paying their fair share of taxes. Every week in the newspaper, we see ads in the paper for in-law apartment. In-law apartments technically are not, I shouldn't say technically, they're just not allowed. They're basically illegal, but they're advertised every week as being in existence. And I guess the real estate people feel by calling them in-law suites, they're somehow sanctioned, but in actual fact they're not.
But I think an in-law suite, and I guess it depends on how much you like your in-laws, but you might not charge them, right? Whereas, I mean, if we pass this policy, then that really opens up the door for anyone that owns a single-family home to rent out half of their house or a portion of their house to someone else. And I'm not really sure, you know, kind of that we've sort of discussed the policy in the past, or we've sort of vetted it out in the public. I don't know. I don't know how well received it would be.
Well, we've gone to the public a number of times with these policies. We've discussed them. They've been discussed here. These are policies, so that it's the zoning that's actually going to allow them to have the second unit. And this council has actually in the past dealt with applications to allow second units in houses by site-specific amendment. So that's actually what would happen. So by passing this policy doesn't make it any more legal for somebody to have a second dwelling unit in their house, but it would give them the provisions that they would have to meet in order to bring their bylaw application forward to this council. And by doing a zoning bylaw amendment, we would be advertising to everybody within 400 feet of that property, so that they would have an opportunity to come to this council and say they support or they object to that second unit in that dwelling unit.
And, Your Worship, I guess through you to Mr. Hurlovich, I understand that, but the way it is now, I guess people have to come and ask for special permission to change their zoning. If we pass a policy saying that it's legal to have, you know, any single-family home changed into a duplex, because that's in essence what we're doing, and all we do is we set up criteria for it, then how do we then deny applications when they come in? So long as they meet so long as they meet the requirements of the bylaw, how do we effectively deny them and say, no, we want to keep the integrity of the neighborhood. It's a single-family neighborhood. We want to keep it as it is. I don't understand how we can do that if they meet every single requirement that we set out in our policy.
It would be difficult.
It would be difficult, correct?
Yeah.
Because every single planning recommendation that would come forward would say
It
that...
complies with the official plan.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's why, Your Worship, I'm not so comfortable that I can pass that into our official plan.
Okay. Okay, I've got Councillor Ioannoni, Wing, and Thompson.
Thank you, and I had the very close to the same question as Victor, perhaps the same people called us. They said, what do you do if you say no? So we don't pass it. The residents, I know that there are a number of residents watching this today that says, you know, just say no. So what happens if we do say no? Do they appeal us? Can we do that? I'd like to see them appeal us, actually. That would be interesting to watch. But what can we do?
Are you asking that as a question?
Yeah.
Mr. Hurlovich, did you want to?
Yeah. Council can move that policy be removed from the official plan amendment 94 before adopting it. They could defer that for further public consultation, or they could pass it. Those are their choices.
Councillor?
Do you know what, I'd like to make a motion to move for deferral for more public consultation. Because for those not following that this closely, I don't think people understand the ramifications of that. So I'd like to move that for deferral for more public consultation.
Okay, and just before we second that, because once we make that motion, then we can't talk about it anymore. Yes, Mr. CAO would like to comment?
Mr. Mayor, just if we're going to defer it, it may be helpful direction for planning. And perhaps when we're looking at those standards, perhaps those are the kind of things that we could bring back. Because a lot of that detail may be in the standards that you apply at whatever residential zone you're talking about. So if we could kind of give you an idea of what those standards may be, it may be required that they have to provide, you know, on-site parking. There may have to be a minimum square footage of a lot. There may have to be a certain amount of backyard, you know, whatever other standards they put in. But it might be a good sort of exercise to go through and say, if we were to go forward with this, you know, what might those standards look like? And that might give you some comfort as to whether or not you want to go down that path or not. Because agree with your comment that once it's in the OP, it's going to be very difficult to turn down, but it would be incumbent on the applicant then to meet the particular standards that are in our zoning bylaw. And if those standards are very strict or restrictive, there may be a number of single-family homes or properties or lots that may not be able to comply with those standards. So it might be a good exercise that we may want to bring back and have a look at those at the same time that you're going out for further public consultation or before it comes back to council anyway, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Wing and Thompson.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify about assessment. MPAC doesn't base assessment at all on the rental one realizes from renting out a dwelling unit. It's based on fair market value. They compare the property to similar properties in the same neighborhood. And I converted a triplex to a duplex, and my assessment on it went up. So what you're making in terms of rent has nothing to do with what value it's assessed at for property tax purposes.
Yeah, good point. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, just a question through you to Mr. Hurlovich. I think you were around at the time when the NDP government passed legislation that everybody in Ontario could have a second residence. How does this differ from what is being considered now?
Excuse me. I guess the difference is that it's allowing the municipality to set its own regulations. It's a little bit like Mr. Todd said. We could, for instance, say that you have to have a minimum lot area of, and I'll make this up because it's for discussion purposes, 3,000 square feet per dwelling unit. So therefore, a property that has 40 feet frontage, 100 feet of depth, would not have 6,000 square feet of lot area, therefore would not be eligible. When the NDP government basically enacted its legislation, it basically said, if you have a dwelling unit, you can have a second unit. So this affords the municipality to set its own standards in zoning. We haven't yet got to the zoning, but maybe what we're asking for is to bring back the policies that kind of set the framework to make sure that the framework is what we want.
So you can regulate and control, but you can't restrict. Is that your feeling at this point?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? Yeah, Councillor Gates.
Thanks, Mayor J. Daddy. Just a questions on a couple of things here. On the deferral, I guess on the particular dealing with the Chef Boyardee lands, would that be part of the deferral, or are we just we've already made a decision there?
Excuse me, Your Worship. This council actually directed that we take the Chef Boyardee lands out of the node at Morrison and Dorchester some months ago, so that is entirely removed. Okay. But there is a recommendation here that the balance of the Dorchester Morrison node, which is the Optimist lands, the former Walmart site, Zellers, those properties would also, which were intensification lands in this OPA 94, would be deferred so that we could do, again, further public consultation, largely around the Optimist lands.
Okay, so I see where it says Optimist Park application.
Yes.
And where's the application came from?
That's the application by River Realty, which has an offer to purchase Optimist lands, and they have a plan of subdivision, an official plan amendment, and a zoning bylaw amendment application filed with the city, and they have actually been to this council with that. We've deferred that so that they could go back, redesign the subdivision relative to maintaining Morrison Street to the Queen Elizabeth Way with the potential of a flyover across the Queen Elizabeth Way. So we're just doing a joint study with River Realty now to determine where that bridge over the Queen Elizabeth Way would start on Morrison Street on the east side of the QEW and where it would end on the west side. And once we know where that starting and ending point, we know where the road will be that could lead into Optimist Park for housing development. So that probably will be coming back to council, I'm going to say, likely won't make the March meeting, so most likely the April meeting of this council.
Okay, I appreciate that, but I guess what I'm trying to establish, and I asked it at the staff meetings last time, who actually owns the Optimus Park lands as we speak today?
Ask Mr. Beeman to comment.
I did send her out an email that the Optimus,
but
the
I-
Optimus still own it.
So the Optimus still owns it?
It's still registered in their name. The legal title is still in the name of the Optimus Club.
Okay, so
So if there's if they have actually transferred the title to the property, they haven't recorded it yet.
as of today, as we're doing this
Yeah.
plan. The other thing is on the former Walmart site, I believe that we're aware that's going to be a target. I think that's been announced as well. So I'm just trying to figure out why we want to defer it, that's all. On page 4, I took a look at the numbers on population growth as we go further, because we're trying to do this over a long period of time. And on 2011, on the total population, it talks about 89,100. Is that a correct number for the city of Niagara Falls? Do we know?
You're referring to page 4 of 2012-03, that report?
Yeah.
So I'm not following you with,
Growth objectives? It's in the back. It's back in the bylaw section, sorry. It's in the back.
Sorry. Okay, which page?
There's a
sorry?
table there, page 4.
This is a chart that's provided to us by the region. It's not our chart, and we're required by the region to adopt this chart into our document.
No,
So
I
these are
realize
their-
that, but I guess my question is that it's something that we're making a decision. I'd just like to know what the accurate amount of residents we have currently today in Niagara Falls. And is it 89,100 is what I'm asking. We don't know? Is that,
I'm not aware that, the
Okay.
last census was taken last year, I don't have those figures.
Maybe we get the clerk to comment on that.
Last census, 82,182 people.
so
That was 2006 census.
no.
He plays a lot
Well,
of trivia
because,
night.
and because I think it is important to know, because we're taking a look and we're trying to project on a go-forward basis on the amount of housing we're going to build, all the other stuff, what we're going to do in Chippewa, even though we got lots of problems there. And then if you take a look at, when you go down to 2031, they're saying that we're going to have 106,800 live in the city. But if you take a look at what transpired by the numbers that I'm aware of, and I'm sure other people are, in 1976 to 2006, over a 30-year period, we had an average of about 400 more come into Niagara Falls. With this chart here, it's showing that over that same 30 years going forward, we'd end up with about 800 more coming into Niagara Falls. And I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, where is the population growth going to come from when you take a look at what's happening, the positive things that have happened in Niagara Falls in the last 15 years with the 2 casinos, with obviously the hotels, and certainly going up with the hotels. I just don't think that the numbers are kind of add up. And when you talk about the number of jobs that are going to be created, I don't see that. So I'm really concerned on what the region provided to us on this page, particularly with I don't believe it's overly accurate when you're asking us to make a decision on a growth plan over the next 30 years. I think I'm really concerned on who put that particular part together. So I just wanted to raise those couple issues. And obviously, on the deferral, I have some concerns around that. And just one other thing where it talks about, we're looking at, and maybe Councillor Wayne Thompson could help me on this. They're actually saying in the document that they're expecting to have approximately 5,000 more jobs in the tourist sector over the next little while. I guess that's all great news if we can get there, but that certainly is a lot of jobs. They're talking about an increase of 24,600 people. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out where they get these numbers from. And, you know, you're asking us to make a decision on our growth plan. I'd like to have at least accurate numbers, relatively accurate numbers, and it doesn't seem like that's happening through a major part of this document. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Hurlovich, I don't know if you wanted to comment on where the numbers come from. I know they come from the region, and the region provided 4 different sets of population forecasts depending on where the growth took place. But I know they're at the region. I don't know how they came to be. Maybe you might want to comment on that.
Yeah. Yes, the region hired a consulting firm, Dillon and Associates. Most of this work was done in around 2007 during still good economic times. And so the forecast was such that the economic growth would continue at the same rate. Of course, it's dropped off. I understand Smithville is looking for some additional population, and I'm sure if Niagara Falls doesn't want its allocation, they might take it. But the region created this chart, and we're required to incorporate it into our document. If the council chooses to have it removed, they can do that. However, I think again, we'll find that the region will. I can guarantee you they'll insert it because they require us to have it in there. It's their numbers, but the region will be re-looking at their numbers in 2014. So that may result in a revision to these numbers. There's a little notation below the chart that basically says that the region can change these numbers without amendment to the document. So if they were to update their figures, they would adjust these all accordingly. So if growth is going slower, then they could adjust those. The situation is such that the province told the region how many people they could have between now and 2031. The region did its best estimate in allocating that so that they gave so many people to Fort Erie, so many to Port Colborne, so many to Niagara Falls, and so on. Because Niagara Falls is the second largest urban municipality, we got a large share of the population. In addition, because we have a lot of lands that are called greenfields, that is undeveloped lands. Councillor referred to Chippewa, and of course we know Garner South is a developing area in our city. Because of those developing lands, we received a large proportion of the population. We have some work that's going on for the northwest sector. This is the area around Club Italia that's just being reviewed for us. We've got a draft report in, and that consultant actually identifies that growth has gone at a slower rate, but what they're forecasting is while we're growing more slowly now, it just means that we'll likely grow quicker at the end of the growth period. So rather than growing quickly between 2010 and 2015, we're more likely to grow slowly between that period with faster growth after 2020. So those are the forecasts. They are forecasts and estimates. And as I say, this chart can be adjusted by the region without amendment, and they will be updating their figures periodically. But it gives us a goal to work towards. So when we're trying to forecast future services, when we're trying to calculate our parks needs, when we're trying to determine future development charges, all of these factor into those forecasts. So we do use them in a number of different ways.
Thank you, Mr. Hurlovich. Does that answer your question?
Appreciate it.
Okay. We got Councillor Wing.
Yeah, just to sort of flesh it out a bit anecdotally, I'm finding that, especially knocking on doors during election campaigns, that we seem to be becoming quite a popular destination for people retiring out of the GTA. Housing prices are so much higher up there, they can sell there and buy comparable down here for a lot less and have a good nest egg to retire on. And of course, we have a lot of amenities in the area as well, the wineries, the golf. It's an attractive, beautiful area in terms of nature and that sort of thing. So that's what I find when I go to the door. The other thing is the commuting population. Maybe not all the jobs are going to be in the area, but especially now that we have GO, people will find it a lot more attractive to buy here in Niagara where the housing prices are lower and then commute to jobs in Oakville, Mississauga, Toronto. So I think that's where a lot of our growth is going to come as well.
Fair comment. Okay, well, if there's no further comment, we have a motion for deferral and a,
Of that section.
are we talking that section or of OP 94?
How long ago was the deferral?
Yeah, Mr. Ilovich?
Just for clarification, I believe it was
Motion.
deferral of the, not only the Morris and Dorchester area and the lands that the planner asked to be taken out of the employment zone, Mr. Darvison. The other area was Councillor Peter Angelo's with respect to second dwelling units, and that appears in the back of the report under bylaws. That would be policy 1.10, which includes them 1.101, 1.102, and 1.103. So that's the bottom of page 19 and the top of page 20. And those are all the policies that deal with second dwelling units in residential areas.
Okay,
Those are deferral for further public consultation.
deferral for public consultation. So does everybody, are we clear on this? We got a motion, we got a mover and a seconder. Okay, we're going to call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Right.
The rest of the report?
And now the rest of the report, motion to move the rest of the report. Moved by Councillor Ioannoni, second by Councillor Maves.
Okay, I'm sorry, my mistake.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, it's opposed? Okay, and Councillor Gates opposed. All right, and now we're at RNC 2012-02. Did we do this already? No. Early approval to update the strategic plan for the provision of Parks, Rec, Arts and Culture. What's the desire of council on this one? Councillor Pietrangelo?
Thanks, Your Worship. I just had a couple of questions. I mean, I know staff is looking for early approval to go out and, I guess, get an update to the strategic plan for Parks, Recreation, and Culture. I know it's going to cost $75,000 to do so. I was kind of hoping, Your Worship, that I mean, if staff already know, what it is that they want to update, that perhaps they can just come back to council with the changes. I understand that, Your Worship, the report talks about some things changing. Obviously, I mean, with the Optimist Club lands being sold, there's a change there because we no longer have access to those ball diamonds. The artificial turf put in on Keller Road. I mean, it mentions the Boys and Girls Club in the report, although it's just a new facility, in my opinion. I mean, they've moved from one location to another location unless there's more programs being offered. A lot of these things, I just feel, Your Worship, is a simple calculation. I mean, I think any one of us plug the numbers into a formula and come up with the numbers. I know, like in the case of the ball diamonds, council already did receive a report on the ball diamonds that said, if the Optimist lands are sold, provided that council makes improvements to this part and that part, then we're fine in regards to the strategic plan. So a lot of those are formulas, and I guess, Your Worship, I don't know if there's something else here that deals more with funding. I know I've been asking for a while, though, for a report on the Gale Center, and I mean, years ago, back in 2007, the staff had told council, should they consolidate the arenas and put all of them under one roof, there's going to be efficiencies that we're going to realize, and it's been quite a while now, and we still don't have any type of update. So I'll ask the question. I guess, Your Worship, I'd like to know the current deficit of the Gale Center and whether or not it's over the amount that we've budgeted for.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pietrangelo. We've got a question first. I don't know if we're going to get an answer tonight. Maybe Mr. Harrison or Ms. Moldenhauer.
Budget binder.
Do we have the...
On the Gale Center, the intention was always, once the year-end work was done and we had all the final expenditures in, because we're still trying to, as you can, it's only the end of January, we don't have all the invoices in. we would bring forth, as part of the budget process in the next month, a report on where the Gale Center is actually at in regards to budget versus actual. And that's where we're at. I can tell you right now, though, as is evidenced by the budget document that you have, we are anticipating, we know that the expenditures are greater than what we had forecast for this particular year. And again, we'd have to go back to the original report a number of years ago to look at what was forecast and do a comparison in that way. So right now, I can't tell you exactly the number, but it is greater than what we anticipated it would be. And again, now that we have a full year of operating results in, we can take steps to change processes at the facility. We can change hours of operations, and we can take other steps that we can address what the cost of operations are.
Councilor?
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I mean, there are some numbers in our budget bond here. That's why I figured I would ask the question tonight. I mean, can we get a range? Because I don't really want to throw numbers out there. I'd rather have staff kind of verify. I mean, what do you think we're over right now?
On the Gale Center specifically.
Well, right now, budget to budget is about $600,000 over. That's what we're proposing to spend additionally this year compared to what we spent or what we budgeted in 2011.
Why?
Thank you. Councilor?
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. And I know that Mr. Harrison and I, we already had the conversation today. And I already told him my views on communication with council. And next month, Your Worship, we'll be 20 months into this project. So, I mean, just to use an example, which I gave Mr. Harrison today, if I went to my principal or my program chair at the beginning of September and he asked me how much money I needed to run my classroom programs, if I told him I needed $1,000, and I went back to him in June and said, sorry, but I need $10,000. I'm sure the first thing he would say to me is, why are you telling me now? I mean, council is supposed to be the elected body that's here to make sound financial decisions. In order to make those sound financial decisions, two things have to happen. One, we have to receive information, and two, the information has to be accurate. So I don't really know that 20 months, Your Worship, is something that I would agree with. I have some other questions on it, but I don't really want to belabor it. So.
Okay, thank you, Councilor.
I would just like to respond to that, and I know in the last couple of years we have attempted to provide better and more timely financial information on an operating basis and on the capital budgets. Again, we're striving to do that so that we get quarterly reports and various things like that, so that council has that information at their disposal. The reason that the arena was not provided, even though we did have an original calendar year per se, the arena opened in June, and so a calendar to calendar year would be June to June. It was decided that we would wait for the full operational result of a full calendar year to bring forth the information, and that was the reason that we didn't bring forward at an earlier point.
Yeah, Councilor.
Your Worship, I know Mr. Todd is trying to make changes, and again, I just related to myself at work. I'm sure that if I did the same thing, the first thing my principal would say to me is, why didn't you come to me sooner? So I hope in the future we can get the information sooner, even though we still don't have the information now.
Thank you very much, Councilor. I've got Councilor Iononi, Gates, and Morocco.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to the report on the floor, RC 2012-02. I agree with Victor. I think we had a summary of what our recreational needs were and were not when the soccer club came to us for the $1 million. I see no reason to spend $75,000 when we're looking at our operational budget. So the first thing I'll do is make a motion to deny the staff's recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilor Iononi. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councilor Wing. Okay, we've got Councilor Gates, then Morocco.
Yeah, I guess I'll talk to the motion. I was going to talk to it before a motion. I believe the 5-year-old report obviously is a living document. It says on page 2 of the report that the Recreation Committee supports an updated plan. We would like to provide more input into the process prior to anything going to council or out for proposals. My suggestion would be is you have a document that has given you a lot of detail about recreation in Niagara Falls. I think maybe sitting down with the Recreation Committee, maybe 2 or 3 people around that table. There's a lot of people around that table that have a lot of expertise around the parks in the city and what we need in recreation. Maybe sit with them and try and update it a bit, but to spend $75,000 on a consultant just, I think it just doesn't make any sense at this point in time. But getting more input from the groups at the Recreation Committee meetings that I attend, I think it's a great idea. They're very enthusiastic about recreation. They'd really like to participate in making it better for recreation in the Niagara Falls, and that might be one way to save $75,000 as well. So I'll support the motion.
Thank you. Councilor Morocco?
I'll speak now to the motion, and I'll support the motion only for the main reason, is I'm still waiting from September or August when I brought forward 2 motions, actually, and I'm still waiting for reports from staff, and I understand that they are getting it, but I just have to say, and I'm not here to attack staff, I understand there's a lot of other issues that maybe than the motion that I've asked for, and that was a report back, and second, I think, by Councillor Iannoni in regards to Patrick Cumming Park, what the spending was. But I have to just say, in the second motion that I'll bring forward too is about the Committee of Adjustments and about minor variances and what justifies minor and major variances. But, however, with that being said, with today's technology, I just don't understand why we would wait so many months just to get some information back, and just kind of goes back to Vic. If you've got these numbers here rolling around, we should know within a day what our numbers are and where we stand as a corporation. Any other corporation, I don't know if you could be successful in surviving, but guys, I'm just saying, I know that it's coming forward, but I'm just having a real hard time dealing with the timelines that I have to wait for reports.
Okay, thank you. Councilor, yeah, Mr. Harrison?
I just want to clarify just for council that the report is indicating that the $75,000 is coming from the Development Charges Reserve Fund, so it has absolutely no impact on the budget that we're talking about tonight. That money is coming out of development charges that are collected, and that's going to be funded. Now, certainly, it could be used for another development charge available project, but it's not going to impact the operating budget.
Thank you. Councilor Iannoni?
This is waste.
Okay. We're good? Oh, we're going to ask the CAO is going to say a word, and then I got Councilor Carrio.
Mr. Mayor, and I just wanted to give an indication to council why we brought this report forward at this time. We are getting a number of requests from a whole variety of recreational users, clubs, groups coming to us with ideas for spending on partnerships or whatever. And our dilemma is that we're trying to balance all these competing interests. And it's difficult for us at this point because of at this point we consider the plan to be somewhat outdated. It's hard for us to balance off these competing interests. So in anticipation of us presenting, probably in a month's time, our 10-year capital forecast for you, we wanted to be able to present some updated information. If council turns this down, we'll have to turn to the staff and get some information for you that you can deal with to make those decisions. It may not be in the same format as a major consultant's review, but we will attempt to get those updates for you. The dilemma we're faced with, and what you're going to hear some further from Mr. Harrison later on, is we spent a lot on recreational facilities over the last number of years. Some of our other infrastructure needs attending to, and we're just trying to provide information for council so that you can make informed decisions with having an update on where our recreational facility stands. So that was the idea behind it. All of the other directors have gone now and put together their 10-year capital plans. And right now, in order for Parks and Rec to put forward their plans, because some of the information was outdated based on some of the facility shifting, we wanted to revamp that. But if the money isn't approved tonight, we'll have to find a different way to do that, because we need to get that information in front of you. And again, we hope to have that as part of our 10-year capital review that we have probably in a month's time. In terms of Council Morocco, yeah, those reports are here. I believe they're slotted to be here in February. We've had our staff meetings. Both the reports have been talked about in some detail, and they're just being finalized now. So those reports will be back either at the 14th of February meeting or the 28th of February meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Todd. We've got Councillor Kerrio, Ioannoni,
It's
and
not
Wing.
on the motion, Your Worship, so I'll wait till you call the motion. It's on Victor's comments.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ioannoni?
I just want to his comments too.
Councillor Wing?
Yes, Mr. Todd mentioned we have some other infrastructure needs. I don't need to spend $75,000 to know that I would rather spend this money on our other infrastructure. I don't want to build more recreational facilities. Well, we need to fix our roads and separate our sewers. I would rather save the money and use it for other things that we are able to do with development charge money, and instead focus on the infrastructure we have that is really falling apart and really needing some money put into it. So I would like to just shift away from, we've spent a lot of capital dollars over the past decade or more on new recreational facilities. I would really like to shift away from that and into our basic, our core infrastructure, the roads, the sidewalks, the sewers, the water lines. That's where I would like our capital spending to focus.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pietrangelo?
Thanks, Your Worship, and I can't disagree. I can't disagree more. I think the reason why I wanted to bring up the Gale Center, and I believe it's tied to this, is because, I think if staff want to make changes to the strategic plan, then they already know what changes they want to make. So why do we have to go out and ask a consultant to commission a report to make those changes? I'm not opposed to making changes to the strat plan, I just wanted to point out the Gale Center because I guess I feel for some reason that the operating deficit that we have over there simply hampers our strategy moving forward. That's all. Because I know we talk in terms of capital dollars, but capital is not as bad as operating. And if we're losing, $600,000 on one facility, that means that money is being lost every single year. It's different than just going out and spending capital dollars on one project, whereas you have that expenditure only in the year that you spend it. An operating deficit is something that happens every single year. And this year we heard a couple different sort of reactions. One was in regards to playgrounds, where I think Councillor Gates had brought forward Preakness Park, and staff said, we're just finding it very hard to find any money to update our playgrounds. Well, $600,000, if each playground replacement costs $50,000, that's 12 parks that you can replace in 1 year. But yet, moving forward, if we continue to hold on to this operating deficit for the one facility, then that's $600,000 that might have to be spent year after year after year with really nothing to show for it. That's why I think, in some way, that that operating deficit is tied to the change in strategy. But I think, Your Worship, that council is probably not opposed to changing our strategic plan. And if staff want to bring us back the changes that they'd like to see implemented, then we'll gladly take a look at them.
Make the changes, well, the consultant is what you're saying. Yep, Mr. CAO?
Just on the Gale Center issue, because there is an outstanding report, and Ms. Moldenhauer and the treasurer and I have been discussing getting that report back to you, but again, wanting to wait for those year-end numbers. And it's really a case of our first full year of operation, and the estimates for what it truly cost us to run that building, quite frankly, were totally underestimated when we went in to build a building. And that's, and so now we're in a situation where we have to go and control how we look at those costs. So the report you'll be seeing back will be talking about, hours of operation, staffing models, revenue models, because we really have to go now and have a look at those issues. I think the reports that were to council back, I'm not sure what year that was, 2007 maybe, that showed operating things. Be quite frankly, and no disrespect to the people before us, they were numbers that were not at all accurate as to what the reality of the situation is today. And that's why we're faced with this situation, having to now look at these numbers, and that's why council's faced with these numbers. But if there were suggestions of sort of, I don't want to use the word enormous, but if there was promises of operating efficiencies, I can tell you those have not been realized, and I'm not sure it was a realistic expectation right from the get-go when the building was planned.
Councillor?
Oh, Your Worship, I guess I'm happy to hear Mr. Todd at least say that to us. And that's why in my previous comments, I did stress that, I mean, if we are going to make sound financial decisions, you know, we actually need to be updated with information, and we need the information to be accurate. So I appreciate the comments through you, Mr. Todd.
Okay. To the motion, other comments to the motion? No? Did you want to call the vote on this? Did we have a second? Okay, so we've got the motion, who made it now? It was moved by Councillor Ioannoni, and it was seconded by Councillor Wing. Okay. We'll call the motion to not spend the $75,000 and leave it in our development charges funds. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. All right, yes, Mr. CAO?
Well, now that the vote's been taken, if I may, I think then what we will do as a staff, we will regroup and we will try to do some updates on the existing plan. And I think what we would then do is take some of that updated information back to the Recreation Committee and the Park and the City Committee, have some dialogue with them, and then we'll bring that sort of documentation back to council at that time.
Okay, I've got Councillor Carrio, Ioannoni, and Maves.
Going back to Councillor Peter Angelo's comment, Your Worship, whether appropriate today, I think, is whether or not these numbers were put together by staff or in conjunction with staff and consultants, designers, whatever, whoever was pitching us when we built this facility. The reason I'm concerned about today is we've got another group of consultants pitching us on another facility, and I'd like to see how we arrived at the numbers before, why we're over, before we get into another situation with the bus depot. You know, I want to make sure we don't get in the same situation where we think it's going to be one way, 2-3 years down the road. It's not the capital cost, the ongoing cost. They go on forever like city taxes.
Mr. Mayor, and I think the councillor makes a very good point, and that's certainly something that the treasurer and I have been talking about. You know, we want to make sure that as we go forward with this estimate, it would be really good to have what the expectation is on what those operating costs are as we go into them. And I'm not going to stand here tonight and say, hey, by building a brand new building over there, we're going to save you lots of money on utility costs, because I don't think that's going to be the case. I think what you're going to see is that, you know, our costs may even increase because it's obviously a bigger building. And that's what we need to nail down. And we need to know those numbers, you know, eyes wide open as we go into this project. So there's not only the capital side, there's definitely the operating side, and we're now seeing that with the Gale Center, where, you know, some of those operational costs were quite a bit understated. And we don't want to face that facility going into our new transit building.
Councillor Ioannoni, we know you have a conflict. You have noted that you have a conflict on the transit. Councillor Carrio just brought that up arbitrarily. Obviously, no motion to be made.
But I want to just go to staff just to send a message, because I'm it's infuriating to see that we are $600,000 over in an operating budget to be told now. I think we need to establish some sort of threshold that says, excuse me, we've passed this amount of an operating budget. When it gets to X amount, and to me $600,000 is too much, when it gets to X amount, council needs to be informed that the numbers given to them prior were not accurate. Quite frankly, none of them are here anymore. So it's hard pressed to go back to them, and we're not blaming the staff sitting here now, but to me, over $500,000 overrun an operating deficit is huge. And now we have to find it. So, and you know, coming into this room, we learned all sorts of things about the Gale Center. So I would really like to see a report come back in regards to things that are taking place there. In my mind, if you're hitting $150,000, $200,000 overrun, that should have been to us immediately. Maybe a quarterly, not at the end of the entire year. To me, we're not informed. We're coming into this meeting not well informed. And it makes it hard. And just for staff to know, we're kind of in the cut budget mode, and that $75,000 was just the first start of what we're going to look to cut. So to me, now we've got to find $600,000? I don't know how we're going to do it.
Okay. Counselor, and by the way, on that point, I just wanted to mention, if I could just share, we did receive an email from Albert Zappatelli in regard to our hydro being part of the problem, that there's community energy programs, and he'd love to help us find efficiencies that can put us in a better place. So we may invite him to give some suggestions. Counselor?
And to that point, we did have Niagara Peninsula Energy here with Sue Forestier and Brian Wilkie, and they did extend to the city the opportunities to do energy audits on our large buildings. I don't think we've taken them up on it. Maybe now is a great time when we're sitting with a $600,000 operating deficit to take them in. But you know, and not to put fuel on the fire, but coming in here, somebody made a comment that we have heated sidewalks outside at the Gale Center. If that is true, there's a big problem, because not one of us ever knew that they were building sidewalks outside the Gale Center heated. So I'd like to see, is there anything else in the Gale Center heated? Because we don't have automatic flush toilets or automatic water. So I'd really, 2 staircases I understand. I'd like to see that in a report. Because I think people are at home screaming that their tax dollars help build something with 2 heated staircases, heated sidewalks, but you know, the kids aren't flushing the toilets. That might be interesting, because we were all counselors then and we didn't have that information.
Well, and that's why some of this, one of the suggestions from Mr. Zappatelli is that his system he's put on his farm is net metering, where he's put up solar panels, industrial ones that follow the sun, and his meter goes backwards during the day, and at night when he needs the hydro, it goes forward, then he takes from the grid. So he feeds into the grid, takes from the grid, and between that and his geothermal heating, he's zero footprint on the grid. And he's got some suggestions through a business he's involved in that he'd love to help us to maybe put an RFP together to go out and seek this kind of alternative means, because he said hydro prices are only going up. We need to get ahead of it now. So that may be part of the direction that staff will take us in to help us find efficiencies. So no question. I know I've got Councillor Maves and Councillor Pietrangelo yet.
Yeah, Your Worship, I just want to ask possibly Mr. Harrison, on that $600,000, and I know the first year when there's got to be startup costs and acquisition costs and things like that, that's all factored into that $600,000?
Well, no, what the difference is really, we had estimated that the utility electricity costs would come in at around $320,000, and it's more like $600,000.
That's $300,000 of it.
Yeah, exactly, and to be honest, the arenas always operate at a deficit. I mean, let's be clear. I mean, they operate at a deficit. We do not charge enough for an hour of ice time. It's not like a break even. So it comes down to how much you're going to charge, or how much is it that you're going to, the tax base is going to subsidize the operation of an arena.
Okay, so I guess we can assume also, though, too, that after the first year, I mean, we're going to get some knowledge. Maybe the light should be turned off at a certain time, maybe different things, and there will be some cost savings, some measures done at the arena
exactly,
to pare that down.
Exactly, Councillor Maves, that's exactly what is coming forward. Now that we have a full calendar year of operating costs under our belt, we have an idea of what it actually costs to run the facility, and we will take strategies to reduce the operating expenses.
So Mr. Todd mentioned that earlier, that there will be measures taken to
that's what the intention is that's what the report is, and I'll let Mr. Todd speak to that.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, and I view this as a situation, and I do apologize to Council for not having that information here. We were working through a full year, and it's, I guess if I could categorize it, it is over budget, but it's really as a result of a underestimation of a brand new building of what it was actually going to cost us to run. And as we went through the year, staff actually were taking certain steps, tweaking light systems. We talked last week about a cold water method for ice. They were trying these techniques to see if we could get some greater control on the energy costs, because quite frankly, not having a full year of operation, we didn't know what the operating costs for utilities were going to be. We now know that. Now we're into the mode of how do we control that, and how do we perhaps reduce it or put plans in motion to do that. But as I said earlier, the the plan that we're going to come forward with is going to talk about those issues for you. We didn't think it was realistic that, working through that first year, I mean, how do you really manage this without trying to tweak your systems? It wouldn't have been realistic that we were going to come in and have to shut down operations for a couple of months because we've overpaid our hydro bill, but we had to find ways within that year to see if we could manage our hydro bill. And those are the things our staff have been working on. They haven't been as successful as we would have liked, and ultimately the numbers are larger than we thought. But as going forward, we're going to have to bring information forward to council on, as we indicated, user fees, hours of operation. We got to look now that we've got a full year of utilization. We can see when our peak and off-peak times are, when there's hours that are not being utilized. We can look at staffing levels during those times. And there's a whole variety of things that we've got to come back and do a better job of getting controls on the costs there.
Okay, we've got Councillor Peter.
Your Worship, while I still have the floor, I just, while we're still talking about that too, I think we're going to have to really consider things with our VTS terminal, and we're going to have to try and be as energy efficient as possible with that. So we're going to have to look at some different things, especially we're going to keep GO Transit buses warm and whatnot. So there's a lot of factors we've got to look at there.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got Councillor Peter. No, you're good. Councillor Ioannoni.
As your representative on Niagara Peninsula Energy, I just have to make it clear that Niagara Peninsula Energy does not set the hydro rates. The Ontario Energy Board sets the hydro rates, so I don't want the residents at home thinking that you have a 9-people board decide what the city's paying for hydro. The Ontario Energy Board does that.
Fair enough. Do we have any other comments on this before we move on? Okay, great. We can move on. Mayor's reports and announcements. Everybody's favorite part of the meeting. Oh yeah, just me, sorry. First up, with obituaries, we want to mention and acknowledge that Ted Stewart, retired city employee, passed away on January the 18th, and his wife Marion passed away 4 days later. And our condolences go out to the Stewart family. Recent events, did want to mention that the Niagara Community Design Awards were held just recently, last Wednesday, actually, in City of Niagara Falls. We wore out the podium going up receiving accolades. We received an award for Main and Ferry design. Our staff were brought to the front of the stage, and Jeff and his team were marched in front of the crowd as they showed what outstanding design looks like. So we're very proud of our crew. They worked very, very hard. They took total ownership of the project and were accordingly acknowledged in front of their peers in the region. So we're pretty excited about that. As well, in that same area, Patterson Funeral Home received a design award as well. It was neat when they show you the before and afters, and you really come to appreciate what it looked like. And as well, we received 3 honorable mentions for the Scotiabank Convention Center, for our Family and Children's Services, FACS, and also for the Niagara Valleyway Nonprofit Retirement Residence we once knew as Lord Elgin and then St. Mike's. So very proud of all the projects going on in the city. Half of all the awards were just in Niagara Falls, so it was pretty neat. Also, Sports Wall of Fame took place this past Sunday, and appreciate we had Councillor Gates and Peter Angelo was there as well, along with our CAO and Acting Director of Parks and Recreation. Great event. It was outstanding turnout. The place was packed. Pat Simon, who's been to every single one since it started, said it was by far the busiest he's ever seen. Standing room only, all the way on the outside. People couldn't get into the room, and was a great day. We're really happy to acknowledge all these people that have done great things in sports in the community. And then right after, they can go out into the hallway and see the pictures displayed. And it was a great day, and a lot of families. And the neat thing is all the people that come in from out of town that are so proud to come back to Niagara Falls. They haven't been here in a few years, and to see our new facility, the Gale Center, and especially when they comment that there's no snow on the sidewalk out front, because it was, just kidding. Next up, Women of Distinction Awards. We had a lot of Niagara Falls residents that were in the running, and for the corporate awards, we had Sarah Vasquez and Carrie Painter. For the Community Spirit Award, we had Karen Stern. And runner-up for the Entrepreneur Award is Ruth Ann Newestag, and nominee for the Entrepreneur Award, Deborah Sundstrom. So congratulations to all the ladies of Niagara Falls for representing us well at the region. Looking ahead, we've got the Mayor's Blood Donor Clinic. First ever will take place at the Optimist on Monday, February the 27th. from 1 p.m. until 7:30. So we're looking for donors. You can either call 1-888-2-DONATE. The first ever since I've been here. Here's the mayor.
I've been giving blood for 40 years.
No comments on that. Anyway, we love to invite everyone in the community to show up to the donor clinic. You can find out more detail by going to www.blood.ca or just show up at the Optimist Hall, February 27th from 1 until 7:30 p.m. There'll be orange juice and snacks and a lot of people happy to take your blood. Next, Snow Buddies. We just want to remind people we're still looking for more volunteers. We know it hasn't really snowed much this summer, but we still would ask for anyone, or this winter rather. Well, this summer, it's been kind of like a summer winter. Anyway, we are looking for more volunteers. You just have to go to the City of Niagara Falls website at niagarafalls.ca, click on the Snow Buddy icon, and you can volunteer. And if you're a student looking to get your volunteer hours to graduate, or you're someone looking for exercise or something fun to do, by all means, please volunteer. We have a lot of people, seniors, shut-ins, people that need help, just shoveling their walkways and their steps and whatnot. So please volunteer. And reminder, State of the City address will take place on Monday, March the 26th. It'll take place at the Marriott Gateway, and it is sponsored and hosted by the Chamber of Commerce. So we encourage everyone to attend. And closing remarks, Valentine's Day is coming. Just a reminder to everyone to do something special for that special person in your life. And of course, where would we be other than a council meeting with the most special people in our lives? So we'll be here for Valentine's Day. A motion to go back to Mondays. And lastly, just a reminder that parking on city streets overnight, if you're in the situation where someone has had too much to drink or doesn't feel comfortable driving, please call it into the service center so you won't get tagged. However, if it is on a plowing night, you may get tagged. So be mindful not to leave the cars on the streets during the winter season. So that concludes the mayor's reports and announcements. And next I would ask the clerk under communications and comments. Are there any other additions? All right. So first item up is the Niagara Falls Library Board requesting Louis Byzantine and Brad Peters fill the recent board vacancies. Councillor Iannone, Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As your rep on the library board, they've asked me to encourage council to please support the recommendations that are put before you, so I'd be happy to move them.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Iannone, seconded by Councillor Wing. Are there any other comments? Councillor Peter Angelo?
Your worship, if we have anyone in the public for this.
If we have, is there anybody here for the library board today? No? Okay, I guess we don't. Okay, then we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. Next up, Mission of Girl Guides of Canada requesting February 19th to the 26th be proclaimed as Guide Scout Week. Moved by Councillor Peter Angelo, seconded by Councillor Carrio. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Any additional items, Mr. Clerk? Okay, great. All right, so we're now going to move to our budget section of the meeting, and Councillor Peter Angelo will take over.
Okay, I believe council was given a handout of the presentation that's going to be made by our Director of Finance, so I'd ask Mr. Harrison to proceed with his presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Glad that this year I can be at the presentation. Last year I took the night off, if you recall. Well, we'll see how it goes. It didn't start too well. Tonight's presentation is a combination of the previous presentation that was deferred, as well as a run-through of the 2012 general purposes budget expenditures. I can tell you that the proposed expenditure for the 2012 budget is $99.7 million. The budget presentation is going to go through a number of different things. We're going to talk about how we came about developing the budget and the proposed approach to reviewing it. We have some charts in there that provide a historical perspective on the operating expenditures. We added a couple extra charts just to provide a little bit of information and give some context to what the previous council has done and where we're at today. We're going to talk about what's in the budget and what has been excluded. Again, these are going to be more at a higher level generalization for you to take back with you. We're going to talk about the review of the interdependence of the 10-year capital plans and the need to have a manageable debt program. As you know, because I think we've had 2 or 3 presentations and talking about the capital needs of the corporation and how that ties in with the new revised rules in the financial world in regards to capital asset accounting. So we need to have a discussion on that. We're going to go through, have a quick discussion on where the main cost drivers are by responsibility center. And then we're going to get into the meat of the presentation, which is to review, as we did last year, the expenditures by object code. And we'll certainly have an opportunity to have questions or any additional directions. It seems to me, after the discussions previously on previous issue, that the information coming back in regards to the Gale Center will be coming at the forefront as we move through this, so that we have a better handle on that. But basically, the process we've taken to date, coming out of the 2011 budget, all of the directors were given a direction by the CAO to develop this year's budget with the concept of maintaining core services in each of their area of responsibility. We were told to use a bottom-up approach, zero-based budget, if you like. It's not a true zero-based budget, as we had some discussions previously. A true zero-based budget would you'd start at 0, work your way up. Instead, we analyzed all of the accounts and had the directors go back and look at historic spending to ensure that we cut back on any expenditures that were in the budget that have not been utilized. And again, I think the evidence is showing that was done. We also, one of the other items is that we've added additional lines in the budget documents. You can see a line, we've broken out the overtime component out of the labor component. This will provide better information. And as a number of councillors have indicated, they want more timely and reporting, and we'll be able to provide that in that format. One thing that's inhibited our ability to do a true zero-based cost approach is the lack of real data. To do that type of approach, you'd have to look at the activities that our staff are engaged in, our operating expenditures in that regard. And we are implementing, as has been identified in previous last year, the cartograph system. This is going to provide us a maintenance management system, which is a tool that will provide us with true costing on the activities that we perform. While the general ledger provides you by breakdown by responsibilities, for instance, you can see what the finance department charges, what the cost of the clerk's department. In the operating areas, it's big items. The cartograph system will be able to get to the meat and potatoes of what we actually do out on the field. I'm pleased to announce that we will be going live tomorrow at the transit facility. The transit has been earmarked because of the future VTS system that's going to be implemented this summer. They were earmarked as a priority. We will be going in this summer with prior to the engagement of all the summer activities in municipal works. We're hopeful that this will provide us better data as we review our budgets next year. Moving forward, we can see that the process tonight, we're going to spend most of our focus on the expenditures because simply the budget controls that council have are twofold. The approval for money that's spent And then the second item is the fees or the non-tax revenue that we charge for direct services, i.e. Permit fees, ICE user fees, et cetera. And those two components then really determine what the levy would be. And then the assessment system would dictate what the impact is on the property owner. It's vital then that we look at the expenditures. So tonight we'll be looking at it by category, as I said: labor, materials, contracted services, debt servicing charges. We might want to, you have your budget binders, you might want to flip the chart. So we've talked about that. So moving forward to the next chart. This just provides you a little bit of a historical understanding of where we spent our money in 2011, or where we budgeted to spend our money. You can see that the largest department, which, if I see that correctly, is in yellow, is classified as the administrative services. And this is kind of a misnomer because some very large items are categorized as being administrative expenditures. The regional waste management fee is charged out of that area. The capital allocation funding of $4.5 million is allocated there, and other more types of corporate expenditures. The largest operating division is the municipal works, or the amalgamated municipal works, parks, and cemetery division of $21.2 million. Fire comes in close at 20.2, and then the transportation division comes in at 11.3. The next chart provides you with a historical account of what the total budget expenditures that was approved for over the last 5 years. The jump from 2007 to 2008 really is the major item that happened that year is that the amalgamation of the transit operation into the city, and then there was other types of expenditures that year that increased the budget. But if you look at the 3 years, 2008, 2009, and 2010, you can see that the budget expenditures has actually declined. It's interesting to note that there's other municipalities out there that are claiming that they're one of the few municipalities that are cutting expenditures. And the city of Niagara Falls has a history of cutting expenditures, as was evident by those 3 years. 2011 saw the debt servicing charges of the arena, some of the other capital investments that we made, and some operating increases. I think this is a good indication that previous councils have been mindful of what their spending is and has been, and has shown a real resilience to increasing the expenditure level. We added a couple of charts to the presentation just to kind of show where our spending would be if we had just done the usual 2.5% inflationary increases. You can see that in 2008, it's been rounded off to $93 million. You can see the green shows that the budget is actually declined 9 and 10, jumped up in 11, and then, as I said, the proposed budget is 99.7. The blue charts, the blue columns, indicate what the 2.5% inflation rate would have been, and what our budget would have been had we just taken the lackadaisical approach of just saying by the rate of inflation. You can see that 93 turns into 95.3, into 97, into 100, and 102. So what this really tells you is that we have historically found operating efficiencies because the municipality has been exposed to the inflationary pressures that everyone has been faced with. But we have been able to find savings in certain areas and offset that to increase the expenditure on other items, particularly in 2011 where we were able to capture the debt servicing charges. The next chart is taking this even one step further. The green, again, is our historical budget. The blue is the budget adjusted for inflation. And the pink or purple is actually adjusted for debt servicing, IMT, and VTS. IMT and VTS are two terms that you're going to be well aware of throughout the presentation. It's the intermunicipal transit system. The region contracts us to run the regional transit system. It's a totally fundable system, meaning that our costs are covered by the region. The VTS, as we've talked about, is the Enhanced People Mover System, which is the new system that's coming out. Again, we've put in the budget an additional expenditure, which again is offset in large part by the contribution of the Niagara Parks Commission. But I think what it really shows, it illustrates, again, it furthers evidence of what this previous council and what last year, and the sitting council did last year, and we were able to identify expenditure savings in certain areas. This is important as we move forward, because when we start talking about what's in and what's out and moving for the look for efficiencies, we've already been there. We've done that. We've found savings. We've actually found savings to finance debt servicing. And what, as a management group, we're saying is that we need to plan for the future, because we know that the cost pressures that are outside, knocking on the door, so to speak, are significant and are going to push a need to spend more money in the future. Again, the approach that we're going to take this year is to try to identify an opportunity that we fix this year's dilemma. But we also know that there's big ticket items, and we'll get to that in a moment. What's driving this year's expenditure increase? The inclusions. We had quite a significant talk about the increased operating expenditures at the Gale Center. Again, as the CAO has indicated, our estimates in last year's budget were light. We've now come in with a realistic expectation of what the expenditures are, and it's going to be our management's responsibility to come in better than that. Increased insurance and risk management expenditures. As you may recall, the city went through an RFP last year for our insurance. It resulted in increased insurance costs. We also have exposed ourselves because we took increased deductibles. We're not the atypical 82,000 person, I'll round it to 82,000, but we're not the atypical 82,000 person community. We have hundreds of thousands of people that come to the community. Our exposure on risk is higher than that because we have a lot more people in the city. And this is indicated by our claims. So as a staff, we've seconded staff out of the engineering department, out of the legal department, to look at our risk management. And we've strategies. This is coming out of the review that we did as part of the RFP. It includes looking at claims management and review our policies. But it is leading to an increase in cost. The staffing component isn't, because we just redeployed staff that were in another area to this function. Again, it's another indication that we're working with the attrition program and trying to identify opportunities to put key people into key areas to address budget problems. We've increased the debt servicing charges. You have an additional $468,000 of debt servicing in this budget. We are maintaining the level of capital funding. In previous years, a number of years ago, we reduced the capital funding. All of the 10-year capital needs that are coming in from all the operating departments are indicating that we'll be needing more capital funding. We're not suggesting right now that we increase that because that'll be part of the debt management strategies, but we will be needing to address that in the future year. The initial cost of the VTS system. In the transit area, the VTS system has been identified. I believe the incremental cost is about $1 million. This is new money, new expenditure. The full cost of the IMT is budgeted in. The region started this program in the fall, And again, it's a fully cost recoverable. So both of those, even though they're expenditure increases, they're also increases on the revenue side. The exclusions. This is a good time to talk about the pressures that we're facing, because we are facing them. The budget that's before you has had a significant amount of cuts out of it. The money that's cut is a deferment for the future. What that means is that it's unavoidable. Increased expenditure on road patching and overlay. The Director of Municipal Works has indicated at numerous times throughout the last number of years that we need to spend more money on roads, whether it's an operating expense of patching or whether it's an increase in the capital item of overlay or road replacement. Again, we've had presentations in the past where if we're not addressing the patching issues, it leads to a deterioration of the road, which leads to a full replacement down the road. We've maintained the level of patching. There is a slight increase in the budget, but not a significant increase. The implementation of the new transit plan. Council had a presentation. They engaged a committee to go forward and look at the transit operations and say how can we improve it. This was something that the committee came back to the council at the end of last year. They indicated that they wanted significant improvements to the transit plan. Significant cost increases, both from the operating side and from the capital side. Again, the full implementation of that program is not in here. There's actually no implementation. The senior staff feeling right now is we're going to have our hands full implementing the BTS system and dealing with the BTS system before we put new expenditures in for the transit plan.
Just on that point, Councillor?
You know, we had an entire year almost of an exercise for residents. Thousands of people are participated in our surveys. A resident committee group, students, seniors, employees of the tourism sector, the whole bit, who say that all we do is focus on tourism. We had a whole initiative to create a better transit system so that people can get to work, people can get to school, people can get around. Our transit system sucks as it is right now. Even our own managers told you that. Is it not up to council to pull that implementation of the new transit plan and not staff? Because you're going to have thousands of people watching this who said, thank you for patting us on the head and thank you for patronizing us, but you never had any intention of fixing these transit routes as it is now. That don't work, our transit system's broken. I don't know how we can send the mayor out or anybody else to say we want to bring in universities, we want to tell GO we have a great system that connects with them, we want to do better, but we're not going to improve our transit system. I won't vote for any budget that doesn't include some sort of improvement there at all. And I think for the people that participated in this exercise, they're probably at home thinking that we are not good for our word because we told them participate in this and we will look at changes. And the changes are already pulled. To me, this is a slap in all their faces.
And I think ultimately it is council's decision, but I'll let Mr. Harrison answer that.
Well, ultimately, it is council's decision, and certainly the original cost estimates that are put forward by the consultant and the committee can be included into the budget. And again, that's certainly not something that, again, that would be a direction of council. What I would say is much like many of these expenditure increases, there is an implementation that has to occur. We will not be able to buy buses this year to implement that. What my original comments really was saying is that we recognize the work that the committee has been done and that a further implementation plan would be coming back for council to decide. If council is the ultimate decision maker, and if they were to indicated that they wanted us to fully implement the program, then we would have to put that certainly into the budget and cost it out, as is.
Councillor?
Well, that and $1.50 will get you coffee at Tim Hortons, because everybody that participated in this thought they were doing it altruistically. He said we wanted significant improvements. We need significant improvements. We utilize the students, we utilize the Mayor's Youth Advisory, we utilize the senior population, we utilize the workers, we utilize tourism employees. We utilized every factor that uses our bus system, and every single solitary one told us how broke it is. I, as a councillor, have no problem standing here voting for that type of improvement in a system. It's been broke for 15 years. Either we have the cojones to do it and stand behind it, or we do not engage people to fix a system that's already broken, because people are not going to trust us anymore.
Certainly the discussion, what we can take from this is that this is the opening budget discussion, and if it's the will of council, we certainly can include it in the operating expenditure side, and then we can address that when it comes to later in the discussions when we talk about the levy. Because again, what we're trying to emphasize is that we have a number of spending pressures, not only in transit, not only in the roads, but other areas as well, that again we have to address.
Can you just for a second, Mr. Harrison, sort of focus on the areas, because I know we had a discussion earlier about the different areas that are sort of giving pressure to the CAO and to yourself, the Director of Finance, for increases in operating expenditures. And I think what you were telling me right now is that you feel like someone that has their fingers in the dike, just kind of holding them back, and you're waiting until the doors are opened. But transit was one of the areas that you identified when we spoke earlier. I know that. Can you talk about some of the other areas?
Sure. And that was right before we stopped to get in, to discuss transit. That's where I was going. The four areas is the roads, the road repairs, and in effect the sidewalk repairs and sidewalk replacement, road replacement. That's one. Two, the new transit plan. There is a recognition, yes, it's not in this year's budget, but there is a recognition that there has to be an implementation plan moving forward in a go-forward fashion in the years to enhance our transit system. We're not saying that that's not the case. Third, we have increases in our capital funding. I don't know anywhere that that $4.5 million that comes out of the tax budget is significant to fund all of the capital works that need to be done. Whether it's buying new buses for a new system, whether it's fixing the roads, whether it's buying and replacing our fleet, which again is significant because if we don't replace the fleet when we need to, and we try to get another couple of years or 2 or 3 years out of the fleet, we end up paying for it in repairs and expenses. Fourth, the other item is we have a station location report coming from the fire department. If you recall, last year at this time, the Chippewa Fire Hall, there was part of a debate at the time. Staff took the approach of adding and recruiting more volunteers. However, part of the debate at the time was to do a station location study. That is coming forth in the spring. That is going to mean an increase in operating costs and an increase in capital costs in the future. Is the timing this year? No, but it is coming forward. What the budget in front of you is showing you tonight is simply this. The cost of operating the city are rising. We have shown, and that's the reason for those charts previous, was to show that we were able to find operational savings in other areas or defer costs until the future within reason. We kept the levy increases within reason. Tonight, we're dealing with approximately $3.5 million worth of difference between the levy, spending increases that we need to fund from the levy, and we're saying that doesn't include the 4 items that I just mentioned.
So, and I know the CAO wants to say a word, and I know others want to speak as well. Can you talk to council about the feedback that you're looking for? Obviously, each one of the areas that you mentioned is looking for a dollar amount to have the operating budget increased by. And when we spoke earlier, you had mentioned that it was sort of unrealistic to just take on all these costs at once, and that council has to have a plan on how they're going to take these costs over a few years.
Certainly, that's what we've been indicating. I was chided by one of the councilors that we've had the same presentation 3 or 4 times, and perhaps we have. But the reality of it is that we're trying to set the stage for the need that we have. We have some capital infrastructure spending needs that we need to replace. We have operating cost pressures, and the only way we can do those types of things and address them is to have some sort of future plan. And that's what we're trying to address. We recognize that services have to be improved in some areas. Or, again, we recognize that we have people requesting that to happen. It's council's ultimate decision to do that, and it's staff's responsibility to implement what your decisions are. But it's also our responsibility to provide to you an operating or a financial plan that is reasonable and moves forward and addresses the key components. It will result in choices. I mean, the decision to build the Gale Center used up a lot of our debt room. The building of the payment of the debt of the payment of the Gale Center used up a significant portion of our operating costs. There's almost $2 million in debt servicing charges. That wasn't there 4 years ago. We need to have a plan moving forward, and that's what we're attempting to do by tonight's presentation and moving forward through the 2012 budget. The interrelationship between the capital needs of the departments and the debt management is intended to try to put us on strong footing moving forward.
And just to give council an idea of the money that we're talking about, Mr. Harrison, I mean, I know if we go through the station relocation and it says that that council should commit to opening another fire hall, we'd be looking at adding $2 million to the operating budget?
Approximately. I mean, if you fully service it's anywhere, it could be anywhere in that range. Mr. Dren would be able to tell you exactly what the full operating cost of operating the transit implementation program again is. And again, one of the cautions I would like to say is, as our debate about the Gale Center is, I think that before we implement new services, we really want to ensure, and I think council's given direction, we want to ensure that we have a full understanding of what our potential operating costs are going to be.
Right.
So any of these new items, certainly, we would need to be addressed. And again, but you're talking ballpark figures. It's another couple $1 million to net. Obviously, the transit is one of those services where we do generate income.
Right.
Depending on whether it's 40 or 50%, or maybe in some of the other municipalities 20% return on their bus systems. But again, it's about a net of $2 million. So if you were to implement both of those, that's about another $4 million on top of what we're already spending, plus on top of all the other issues that we're dealing with.
Okay.
Mr. Holman can stand up. Mr. Holman can stand
Exactly.
up here and say,
Yeah.
I need $1 million in asphalt patching. He can easily tell me that. I mean, again, the roads and the sidewalks continue to be an issue. The council gets calls from residents saying, my roads, et cetera. Mr. Holman deals with these types of concerns on a regular basis.
So just to kind of put it in a nutshell, I mean, you talked about an addition of $2 million for fire should another station come on. The initial implementation phase of the transit plan, I believe, was $1.7 million in operating plus the capital costs. So again, you're right around the $2 million mark. And as you mentioned, Mr. Holman, for municipal works, I believe would like more money as well. And if you peg that at the same amount at $2 million, I think what you're trying to tell us is that $6 million increase for operating is just unrealistic.
All in one shot.
All
in one shot. We're trying to say to you, we have other operating expenses just in operating the facility. I think what we're trying to show, the charts was evident, is that we have found savings. We have been able to add some new services. We've been able to look at new areas and add costs. And we've been able to find, there was a restructuring that was done a couple of years. We found some savings there. Again, we're at the point where the opportunity to pull out savings, significant savings, to be able to replace it with significant expenditure increases is really not there.
Now, you talked earlier as well about council sort of prioritizing what they would want to see, their needs. I guess what they would want to acquire in the future. And did you want to tell council at all sort of what your thoughts were about incremental increases to the operating budget?
Well, again, the operating budget has got to be put up in front of council, and then council will be able to decide what expenditures they wish to include or take out. A prudent approach, though, would be to start taking, for these types of items, is to have an incremental increase in the levy that is designated strictly for something like asphalt paving, asphalt patching, or in a 1 year. Then the next year would be something else, and that, much like we pool the capital money, the $4.5 million, and all of the directors in effect compete for that money, and we don't do everything that everybody asks for, but there's a competition. There might be an opportunity for that, but again, it's premature. We haven't even presented the budget to let council have their input into the priority areas that they see, and staff's responsibility to find opportunities for additional savings or increases.
Okay. Mr. Dodd, did you want to mention something?
I think Mr. Harrison's doing a great job explaining what we've been through, but I just wanted to explain this chart a little bit and just indicate this chart was my direction. What we've been facing in preparing the budget for you is that there are certain things that have gone up automatically. Mr. Harrison's talked about it. Your insurance costs, your risk management. We're always having fuel increases, utility costs, salary negotiations, benefit costs. Those are givens. Those are increasing every year. What the instructions were is nothing new. So if there's anything new, we can't afford it right now, we're going to put it on a separate list. That's what you see here. So everything on here is new spending. So it'd be the transit plan implementation, Mr. Holman looking for additional patching and overlay, any increases in capital, any new salaries. This budget has no new positions other than the positions that have already been approved by council for the VTS, and any other new salaries. And I can't remember exactly how many there were. There was a few that were in there. We've taken those out. So this is sort of the new spending, if you will, because we were having enough difficulty getting this budget before you managing the existing spending. So we felt it would be better, not to say that we've made a decision on this, and it's just to say this is what are the exclusions at this point based on what the asks of those directors are and what we felt we had to identify separately for you because we didn't feel we could incorporate it. What Mr. Harrison's been talking about, though, is when you look at some of these plans like the transit plan or new capital funding, we've been talking for some time about these 10-year capital plans. We really need to get that in front of you so we can give council an idea of what the capital spending is going to be over the next 10 years, and then you have to align that capital spending with the increases that are anticipated with your operating costs as you move through those years. So it didn't really make a lot of sense for us because the guys are busy enough right now, quite frankly, on the VTS. It's a huge project getting that up and running. Our thoughts were if we could get the implementation of a 10-year capital plan to you, tell you how you can fund that, show you how you can fund that, then that aligns with when you would bring on capital spending to coincide with the increased operational costs. Because as we say, we're going to have increased operational costs on the transit. If we're talking about fire services, we're going to have increased operational costs there. But you have to align those operational costs with your capital, 10-year capital needs. That ties in with the debt management strategy, and I'm not trying to steal the treasurer's slide presentation, but our plan is in March to get that in front of you. And you can't look at these things in isolation because we've already heard, we've gone into, say, the Gale Center, not to pick on that more tonight, but we really have to have a true indication, whether it's a new transit facility, a new Gale Center, what those operational impacts are as we not only approve the capital but look at the operation. And we've got to get those aligned so that we don't get these glitches again. So that's why and it was no disrespect to any councillors around the table that are pushing for one of these items or another. It was just trying to be realistic that we have to separate those. And our belief right now on some of these issues, it's premature because we haven't got a grasp on what our 10-year capital needs are going to be. And until we get those capital needs laid out to you and you buy into that, we believe it's premature to start talking about operational issues without having a complete look at what those 10-year capital needs are.
Councillor, are you done? Sorry? Yep, Councillor Wayne.
Thank you. I'm going to start by disagreeing with seeing increased expenditure for road patching and overlay as being a new expense. That is not a new expense. That is existing infrastructure that everybody in this city uses and that we need to maintain. And I disagree with the approach about letting the directors fight over the pot. I happen to think that some things are more important than others, and what municipal work says is needed is more important than what recreation or, I don't know, I don't want to pick on anybody in particular, but municipal works is paramount. The roads, the sewers, the water lines, the sidewalks, those are absolutely vital. Fire's there too. That's another vital one. We've got to keep those up. There's no way I can see that extra $1 million as being new money. If it's needed, it's needed. If the road's falling apart, then patch it. If it needs an overlay, then do the overlay. We know that it costs us 4 or 5 times more if we wait. And we've been told tonight that if we just try and patch up the buses and keep them running, we're spending more in keeping them running than if we bought new. So we've got to focus on the transit. Our roads and our transit, those are core municipal services. We really need to focus on the things at the core. And I don't want to pick on anybody in particular, but when I went through this binder, I didn't see how zero-based budgeting had been done. It's the exact same binder I got last year. Some numbers have been changed, but otherwise it's exactly the same. And if we're doing zero-based budgeting, I don't understand why we're still paying for craft programs at a private art gallery. My daughter has taken programs there, along with her friends from Welland. It's not just Niagara Falls kids. It's Welland, it's Thorold, it's St. Catharines. It's a private gallery. It's not publicly owned art in there. It's private. We're giving them money. We're giving lawn bowling money. We're still sending people away to the Heritage Conference. These aren't staff people, but they're people on our boards and committees. There's lots of places that we can cut. Things that really aren't central. They're not core. There's so much we can. If we just take a logical look at this, we can go, okay, well, this really is getting a little far toward the edge, and cut it out and put the money into the core things we need to. Okay, it's going to cost $2 million for a new fire station, or there's going to be all kinds of capital needs for new buses. Well, we just saved $75,000 tonight. That $75,000 in development charges that staff wanted to go into an updated recreational study, that can instead go into a new fire station. It can go into new buses. We've got the money there. We just need to make more logical, rational decisions and decide. We haven't done any prioritizing. Nobody has come to me and said, what's your priority this budget? Because I would say right away, our infrastructure, the existing infrastructure, the stuff we need to maintain and keep going, the buses, the roads. Why can't we do that? And why can't we do a real zero-based budgeting where we go, yes, if the roads fall apart, the city ain't going to run. That definitely has to happen. Our fire service, we need that. Everybody relies on it to be there in case we need it. Okay, that's in. And just keep adding till we run out of money, and things that are left out are left out. That's what I was expecting to happen. And still, instead I get same old, same old. But I really agree with Councillor Iannone about we've got to start working on that new transit plan now. We can't ask all these people to help us develop it and then go, thank you, that's it, and nothing happens. The excitement's there. We've got to keep the momentum going. We've got all these new initiatives. The regional transit is happening. The Brock and Niagara College runs are happening. There's all kinds of new markets starting to ride our buses, and we need to have our system up to par as well, so that they continue and ours blends with these others, and people give up the cars and use the transit system. You've got to start growing it now, along with all the others that are growing. New salary positions, yeah, I can live without that, but there's things that we just can't leave out, and there are other things that are in that I think we can.
Okay, I wanted Mr. Harrison to address the comment about zero-based budgeting, because that was the first thing I said to him this year when I saw our binder.
Well, I mean, to do a proper zero-based budget and start from zero, you certainly, we do that. I mean, we do that every year in the sense that all of the directors look at their staffing and look at the responsibilities that they have. So from a labor standpoint, that's done. One of the things I mentioned earlier was the cartograph system and how in the areas of operations, particularly in Mr. Holman's area, where we have multiple mobile staff doing a variety of tasks, that type of system would give you a better handle on the operating expenses. We haven't added any new staff. We're not justifying, certainly we have more needs than we have the ability to do. Every day, our operating staff are asked, requests to do more. If you take the forestry side, there's more work orders than staff are capable of doing it. Mr. Holman has requested additional costs for, assistance in that area. Again, it comes down to, there's two things in a budget. There's meeting the services and affordability. And again, this is always the dilemma in a budget year, is how much can you afford? Yes, we're trying to do more with less, but can we do more? The presentation of the budget, simply, if you want to do a zero-based budget, we could start from the first page and go through each line item and eliminate that. A number of years ago, this approach was taken, and we could justify every single expenditure in that. The directors in each area have gone through their operating expenses and can justify the expenditures that are in this budget. It's simple as that. And if council decides that it doesn't agree with the inclusion of certain items in the budget, then certainly we could take it out. But again, the approach has been and always has been a zero-based approach is a terminology that's used. Effectively, what we did is we ensured that the actual expenditures have been lined up with the budget expenditures, and ensuring that what the directors are spending money on are what they said they would in the budget, and that's what we've done this year. So certainly, I don't know what else to say. One thing I would say is the analogy that you could take the $75,000 that's in the recreation master plan and use that to buy a bus, or use that to buy a fire hall, or use it to buy a road or fix a road is not correct. Though the way DCs work is we collect the money for a specific purpose. It goes into that reserve, and there's specific projects that are DC eligible in those areas. So in this particular area, the strategic plan is for recreation, comes out of the DC reserve for that specific area. So again, we don't have that capability to rededicate that money to that position, that area. So, more questions? I can stop. Or, okay.
I guess I'll just follow up by saying, council needs to give the directors perhaps a little stronger direction on what money should be spent on, and things that, even though it would be nice to have, aren't as important to have. Like, we need to draw a line and say, these are the must-haves, these are the nice-to-haves, and fund the must-haves fully first.
I just wanted to say, and I forgot to mention this, 2 years ago, we changed the grant policy. We changed the grant policy, and Mr. Todd put forth a recommendation that we get out of the grant business. The City of Niagara Falls has a number of grants. during that process, we established rules for the grants, meaning that and similar to other municipalities, that basically grants were one-time funding. They'd be one-time in nature, startup programs. They'd be for a capital project or something like that. Put that forward. What we ended up with the change of a lot of those grants into fee-for-services, which truly, in a lot of the cases, they are an extension of the corporation in areas, and they provide a good service. We are left with a number of grants again. We've had the discussions at council. Council those groups from fee-for-service or from grants into fee-for-service. Again, council's the one that's directed us to do that, and so that's just a clarity on that issue.
Councillor Ioannoni.
Thank you. On the DC, on the $75,000 DC charge, could that not go down to pay the debt for the Garner Grassy Brook borrowing that we did?
No, because the DCs that are collected for water and sewer are a different charge than the recreation. In your DC bylaw, there's a different charge for all sorts of different roads versus water and sewer versus transit versus fire versus, we talk about the capital investment in a new fire hall. Some of that money is already put aside in a DC reserve for that exact purpose. There are DCs for new, obviously that would be an eligible expense because that's an expansion of our service delivery. But to transfer the $75,000 use that for the Garner Grassy Brook is no.
Okay. When we go back to the grants and relay the grants from grants to fee-for-service, we stood here and we said we were going to start cutting grants. We warned the agencies, let's cut grants. We went 2-3 years, let's cut grants, let's cut grants. Instead of cutting them, we moved them from a grant to a fee-for-service so we don't touch them. I don't know another municipality that funds their project share. We decided Project Share was an essential city service. It is not an essential city service. It's needed. It's a social service. Perhaps the region should step in and fund Project Share, but it should not be coming as an essential service from a municipality. Transit's an essential service, and we're putting it on the backboard. We really need to take a look at what are we mandated to provide. Are we providing what we're mandated? If so, then we're no longer going to fund the fee-for-services or the grants. To me, it's semantics. We just move them so we can't touch them. And yes, we'll have this council chamber packed with representatives from each group. But the same could be said for the residents who need a road overlay, who'll be here to say, you know what, you pushed us back 4 years ago in a budget. Don't hand me a 10-year budget plan. I have every budget binder from the year I was put on this council, and I can bring you the 5 to 8 year forecasted budget, and we change it every year. So it's only good the year it's in, or the council that's sitting there. It doesn't bind the next council or the next budget year. To me, that's a joke. We really need to look at what are we supposed to provide and where are we going to get the money to do it, and are we willing to stand behind a levy increase? Because I understand your analogy with the hands in the dike, trying not to let the water come out from everywhere. I get that. But it's up to us to decide whether we're going to increase it enough to take that pressure off of you and provide the services. I'm only going to use transit as an example. I do not take the bus. I drove my Buick here. I'm going to drive my Buick home. I don't need a bus. Aren't I lucky? You have a huge population of people in this city that need transit. Not as fortunate to be able to drive their Buicks to work. I'm using that as an example. They believe we are out of touch, that we do not, that this council does not understand cost of gas is taking people out of their cars. Cost of insurance is taking people out of cars. The lower wages is putting people on transit. There are so many variables in that. So when you say pet projects, it's not pet projects. I don't take a bus.
I didn't say pet project.
No, but the answer was everybody has the things that they're driving.
not, we're not doing the road work. We're doing the same as we did last year. It says increased. That means they're not recommending an increase. We're going to be doing the same as we've done. And every municipality in probably North America is the same way. They're totally well behind in trying to catch up with their infrastructure, and they always will be. You talk, years ago, we used to talk $150 million just for sewer separation. And is that ever going to catch up? I doubt it. Every time you get another 50 years go by, you've got another 50 years to catch up on. So I think what we're talking about is the bottom line. We're going to have a full debate on this budget, and the figure we look at here is 4.83%. 4.83%, in my opinion, is excessive. It's not too bad when you talk about, and they used to say a $150,000 assessed home. That doesn't mean when you have a $2 or $3 million bill for one of the largest hotels here, what that 4.83% means. It's huge. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people in business out there that are struggling. And if we came in with a 4.83% increase, I think we'd hear it loud and clear that people are in trouble, people are going to be laid off. So we're talking about jobs here also, which is certainly important. The transit issue, extremely important. I think we've done the due diligence, and we're going to have to come at the end of the day, before we pass the budget, to make a decision whether we can do part of it, all of it, or what we're going to do with that. The same with the asphalt overlay and the road patching. We're at the start of this. So I just want to say that I think the staff has done an admirable job of bringing this into us at this point. And I don't think the message has got through yet. We got a problem here financially. Certainly the Gale Center is wonderful, but they were talking about financing that, debenturing that, over 40 years. We got it down to 30 years. I've never heard of a 40-year debenture from a municipality. That tells you a story when you start debenturing for 30 years. It tells you don't have the money to do it, but you'd like to have it now. So let's give the staff some credit of what they've done. Let's get down and have a serious debate, and we're going to end up at the end passing a budget which is going to be a reasonable increase, and we're going to have to take into consideration, like everybody else, whether you're private sector, business, you can't have everything that you want, and you're going to have to take the best of what you can get out of the dollars that you have, and it's as simple as that. So hopefully we're not going to point the finger at the staff for not doing the job, creating this and what they've done, and taking a stand on that particular slide right there, indicating these are things that are have the money, we're in debt, and we are in serious problems. So let's deal with it.
Yeah, and I'm not quite sure, Councillor, if I would agree. I mean, I think the approach that staff is taking by giving council this budget is just to simply say, let us know where your priorities are at. That's what they're saying. They've taken out all of the asks out of the budget. And they're saying to council, let us know where your priorities are.
Exactly.
That's what they're saying.
We're in the start of the budget debate, so let's get on with it.
But it doesn't mean that we don't have the money to do it, Councillor.
Well,
I think we have
why
the
is
means
that
to do
slide
it.
up there then?
Which slide? The budget exclusions?
Yeah.
Budget exclusions.
But they're suggesting these are things that they can't put in the budget without the council seeing a substantial escalation.
It depends on the decisions that council makes subsequent to that.
Don't dictate to me or explain
I'm not
to me
trying
a
to
budget
dictate anything.
process. I've been involved too long to hear that.
Okay.
I know what the slide says. So don't try to tell me what it's all about.
I'm just
We got a
telling you
money
staff's approach.
we got a money problem.
Well, obviously, Councillor, everything costs money if you want to include it in the budget if you're not already doing it now.
Did you not make the statement about got your hand in the dike? What is that supposed to mean?
I was referring to Mr. Harrison's comment, actually, about having his hand in the dike. Okay?
We're all in the same game.
And I think what Mr. Harrison was alluding to is the fact that he has different departments that would like to spend money in terms of expanding services. And that's why he's bringing it to council.
What am I saying different?
Well, you're saying that we can't afford it. That's what you're saying.
No, I said we have financial challenges. Let's get on with the budget.
Mr. Harrison?
Certainly, anyone else wants another question, I'm certainly glad to answer it, but I think just to summarize, I think this is a good discussion. Just to conceptualize what all the councilors are saying, we're looking for direction from, as staff, as to what your prioritizations are. Where do you want us to go?
Exactly.
What the presentation and the budget that's put in front of you is saying is this is based on the core services that we've had historically. This is what this is the spending increases that we need to go through. So I'll run through and give you a little bit better understanding as we go through the process. Probably the next slide. One thing I do want to admit in the new salary positions in the fleet area. We had included, there was supposed to be an extraction of some staffing positions. The fleet review, as you remember, is not fully complete yet, and there is an indication that there may be some new staff. They were erroneously included and not, so they're to come out, and again, it's up to council to put it back in if you so choose or whatever. The other related budget initiatives, I think we talked about these two. The CAO talked about this. And this is an opportunity for us to work with the debt servicing charges that we have existing in the budget right now. We're at our peak. We only have one other project that we're borrowing for, and that's the museum project, which the museum project will be all said and done sometime this year. We'll probably go out to borrow later in the year or the first part of next year, depending on interest rates. Interest rates, again, are very favorable. So that's that with that chart. This chart here is, okay, this is basically a summary of what's in your budget binder by department. And you can see that the 4.5 spending increase is identified at the bottom, $4.5 million. It translates into 4.8. The big significant areas of increases are in the first two columns. It's really not that the administrative services have gone down significantly. There's a reallocation in there. The other item is that the waste management costs for 2012 haven't been provided yet. The actual contract, if you recall, last year was a little bit less than our budget at the time, slightly less. So that's indicative of what's still in there. Fire and building services, it really looks like a huge anomaly that the largest department, fire, is coming in with an expenditure increase of less than 1%. And the reality for that is that in the fire services, they're going through a natural remix of their staff. They're seeing a large number of retirees of their most senior people, and there'll be a recruitment push later in the year to replace these staff members. And of course, with the change in the mix, it has a favorable result on the fire budget. Municipal works, a large portion of that charge is a reallocation of some staffing costs into the operating budget from the utility budget. On the infrastructure side, it's just a reallocation. There is a corresponding offset in the revenue side. The other is in the fleet area where I did talk about that, so that's why that's up slightly. We do have an overall insurance increase. Again, municipal works is touched with that slightly. Parks and cemetery, again, there was some increased expenditures in some of the areas that we've identified. The transportation department, again, that's strictly the DTS and the IMT area. Recreation and culture, again, we've talked fairly significantly about the Gale Center tonight. And that's what the budget increase by responsibility center is. So if we turn to the next chart, basically we're going to quickly run through the expenditure classifications. Some are more controllable than others, and some are it's supposed to be uncontrollable versus fixed, or controllable versus uncontrollable. And so we're going to review each classification. This is the same chart, rejigged a different way. Salary and wages have gone up by $2.1 million. That's a 5.6. That seems like a fairly significant increase. If you recall, though, in both the VTS and in the IMT, to deliver this enhanced service, we've had to hire people. There is some increases, as I talked about, in the fleet area. There is the expenditure increases for the natural increase in labor costs. There's also an approximate increase of about $400,000 in overtime that's included in that budget. Some of the areas historically have not budgeted for overtime, and again, our actuals are indicating that that's something that we need to address. So in your operating budget, you can see the line items in each of the area of the overtime. And again, while some of the actual expenses, like labor costs, are completed because the year-end's done, there are some year-end work that is done in the month of January and the early part of February, notably receiving invoices from other vendors and that. So we don't really have a full, true indication of what our actual costs are for the year end, and as a result, you will get that later in the process. The employee benefits have gone up significantly. Part of that is related, if you recall, that we have an employee benefit is about 25 to 26%, depending on the wage increase, the wages of the employee. Of a new employee with the new VTS and the IMT system, that's included in that. We also have a significant increase in the OMERS pension plan. Last year, we had a nominal increase in employee benefits. If you can recall, it was less than 1%. And we were able to absorb some of the expenditure increases on the benefits for our staffs. Unfortunately, with the OMERS increase this year, we have not been able to. And that, while a year-over-year expenditure looks like significantly increased, it is actually consistent with what our expenditures are. The debt payment, as I talked about, is about $468,000. That's unavoidable. That relates to the new fire radio system and some of the back half of the rink project. Again, when we borrow late in the year, as we did last year with both we don't have the full cost of the expenditure, so that's being picked up. Materials and services, again, we talk about the VTS and the IMT system. We talk about insurance. There's some other charts we can run through and show you some of the cost pressures. Contract services. Moving down, there's an allocation change in the transfers to boards and agencies, commissions, and contract services. The project share and the Niagara Falls Museum Board are no longer considered transfers to boards, agencies, and commissions. It's actually included in the contracted services area, so that's the result of the increase in the contracted service area and the reduction in the transfer to boards, agencies, and commissions. We've cut back on some of the transfers to reserves, while, again, it would be prudent financially to put, and I'll give an example. In the clerk's area, we have historically always put money aside for the replacement of the voting machines. Again, staff recognize that that's a capital investment, and that really should be addressed in the capital budget. But again, we're not going to set aside money in this operating year for expenditures that we might not need for a year or two because we have more pressing needs. That's the type of thing that our senior staff have been doing. And then the internal transfers is actually the charge for our fleet across the board. There's a reduction in the expenditures because the rates that we charge our fleet and the individual departments has been modified. There's a resultant reduction in the revenues on the opposite side of the equation. So if we flip to the next chart, we can run through some specific areas. As I talked about, the council, committee, and boards, there's an allocation difference between the two areas, $75,000 that has to do with the OPG. It's put in the council, committee, and boards and services on this chart incorrectly, but it's really an administrative service. But the increases are marginal. Fire and building services, again, going back to what we did, our approach, the zero-based approach, we've reduced in some of those areas expenditures that we could cut back on. Municipal works, in general maintenance, there is a slight increase. Transportation is the biggest area, obviously, and that is what we talked about for the VTS and the IMT area. $36,000 in planning and business development is some incremental costs for the relocation of the small business office. So moving to the next chart, we can see that professional development and conferences. This is a small training budget for our staff. You know, you have a $99 million budget. The biggest resource that the municipality has is its staff. We have a number of different people in all the different departments that need to be brought up to speed again and not retrained, but continuing to keep up on their training. And this is an area that we've looked at. And if I could just touch on the council, committee, and boards expenses, one of the things that the municipality is committed to is the I'll just say it's the right acronym, FCM convention in 2014. With that, there is some increase. Last year, we had 2 councilors go to the FCM in Halifax, and again, we anticipate that as we get closer to 2014, because we will be the host community, we will have to continue to expand that, so we did put extra money into that budget. Moving to the next slide. The utilities, again, I think we beat the Bob Gale Center to death for tonight, but that incremental increase is the incremental increase in the utilities. Moving again to the next slide, we see the insurance costs have gone up significantly. We had anticipated and hoped that we would see a significant reduction in our insurance. We were led to believe a year and a half ago or 2 years ago when we originally put out the RFP that there was some sort of savings that we would be able to find by going to an RFP process. That didn't materialize. We actually are paying more for insurance. Now, there's a number of factors. Insurance rates have gone up, but we also have significant claims management, claims expenses, so we see that across the board. The other thing in the transportation area, again, we talk about adding new services. Again, the VTS and the IMT, those expenses have gone into there. So moving to the next slide. Advertising, again, the main driver there is in the transportation area. That's related to the VTS system. Moving along. Contracted services. I failed to mention there was a reduction in the materials account for the recreation community, recreation and culture. It's showing up here as an increase. Basically, it's a reallocation of showing that the snow plowing and various other contracted services are not included in materials, that they're actually a contracted service, and they're identified here. The administrative services reduction of $171,000. The largest portion of that is a reduction in the budget for waste management due to we used the actuals from 2011. So moving forward to rents and financials, that's again a very small amount. It's 1% increase. Those are more a reflection of some of the increased expenditures. So here's another area that we want to talk about is the fee-for-service. In general, the fee-for-services, we've maintained them at the levels they were at in 2012. There are some increases. The Niagara District Airport Commission, again, it's not a true fee-for-service. They kind of tell us how much our allotment is each year, and so there's about a $5,000 increase in that. The summer swim lessons, they've asked for marginal increase. And if we look down to the couple of the other smaller areas, there are small increases. So the bulk of that is in the Niagara District Airport Commission. The Illumination Board is actually an annual, generally sometime later in the year, we get a call from the Illumination Board and telling us what our prorated percentage of the costs are, but we budget the same this year as we did last year. Moving to the next slide. Our approach is tonight we want to get some feedback. I think we've got some good discussion so far. Again, we want to come back on the 14th with any additional information that council would like us to investigate. We also want to bring in the grant organizations. Again, we've asked for submissions from all the organizations that get grants. Now, that's not the fee-for-service groups, but just the grants, including the library board. And then there'll be continuation of any expenditure review based on what your direction is. On the 28th, we'll be looking at the non-tax revenues. We'll have a better idea of what, as you know, we carry forward any operating surplus that we may have in a year. Generally, why we would see an operating surplus would be perhaps expenditure, actual expenditure reductions, and we'd also see the supplemental tax increases that we would get in a year. 2011, we didn't see the significant supplemental tax increases that we had received in previous years, and as we talked about, there were some expenditure increases and pressures on us. But we'll have information on the 28th, and then we can talk about what the impact would be on the levy. Again, maybe optimistically, we're looking for budget approval, and we would talk about the second and third budgets, which is our utility budgets, that night as an introduction. And then we do have to get the utility budget rates approved for 2012. And we will also want to be, as we've talked about numerous times, is getting this whole idea of the debt management plan and the 10-year capital needs plan in front of you before we finalize the capital budget. We did make a pre-approval of half the capital budget based on what's already included in our operating, our allocations from our operating and utility budgets, plus one half of the gas tax, and that was primarily for, as council directed us, for roads, sewer, and water projects. So that's the end of the presentation. If there's any additional comments, questions, certainly be glad to take it.
Okay, Councillor Maves, Councillor Wing.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether the question is for Mr. Harrison or possibly Mr. Dren. On the intermunicipal transportation system, you keep mentioning a cost there. And I'm on that Transportation Strategy Steering Committee, and every meeting I've gone to, it said the entire cost of that was going to be borne by the region.
It is.
Why is this in our budget if the entire thing
Well,
is...
because it's our, we pay the bus drivers, we buy the bus, there are, we insure the buses, we operate the system on behalf of the region. They contract us. There are expense that that's our expenses. They give us the money, full cost recovery for it. So that's what I'm saying. When you look at a 4.8% increase in expenditure, the expenditure is fully included in our budget, and then we get full revenue back. So it's a net zero budget.
It's on the revenue side as well.
So...
we recover the cost in the region. We show the expense in our budget.
I just
but
wondering
we're
why
also
you should
showing
put it in the
revenue.
budget if it's an in and out entry, what it costs and what you're going to
Well,
recover.
because certainly we have to approve the, we don't net out the operating, we have the expenditure side and then we have the revenue side, and we have to approve the expenditures. We can't, I can't pay the bus drivers, I can't run the buses unless it's included, it's got to be included in our budget, so that's why it's there. If you look at the 4.8%, what the point that we were trying to make is that it's actually our expenditures, what truly are our own, are just about 3%, just about 3%. If you take out the VTS and you take out the IMT, our expenditure increase is about 3%.
But this IMT thing will eventually be neutral?
It is neutral. It is neutral. It's included as an expenditure and it's included as a revenue. If you look at, if you turn to your budget binder, and I'd have to know exactly the page. Maybe Mr. Dren can help me out, but you can go
Well,
right.
if it's in there, that's fine. I don't have to know the exact page.
It's a net of zero.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, Councillor Wing.
Thanks. You know, and when I looked at these slides again, I could see areas where we could cut. And I know it's a little here, but they'd add up. Advertising, you know, a lot of it I realize is legislated. You have to advertise certain things and to give notices and that sort of thing. But still, there's advertising that's not legislated. It's not essential. That could be cut. The fees for service area, you know, programs that keep people breathing and sheltered, I can support those, no problem, but there's others that are more of a self-actualization sort of thing, and in tough times, when we're scrambling to look after our basic infrastructure, I think we really need to question whether or not we should be funding those then. And the airport, just to speak to that, there's an intermunicipal agreement. Thorold has dropped out. We managed at the airport to absorb the loss of what we were getting from them per capita. But there's 3 municipalities. It's us, St. Catharines, and Niagara on the Lake. There's a per capita levy in the intermunicipal agreement, and that's what we're being assessed. Our objective there is to move to financial self-sufficiency. We've taken steps toward that, but our hope really is that we'll cease to exist. We want the region to take over the Niagara District Airport. The benefits from that airport aren't just confined to the cities of St. Catharines and Niagara Falls and the town of Niagara on the Lake. It goes a lot wider, and spin-off benefits and all that sort of thing. So we want the region to take over, and when that happens, there goes $95,000 off our balance sheet and on to the regions, and it'll be a lot fairer levy then. It'll be shared not just among 3 municipalities, but among more, and that will help. And I don't know whether, I haven't spoken with the other commissioners about this. I know that's the direction we're going in, but maybe a resolution from this council to the region asking them to speed the process along might help. But, there's other things here where I really question, well, are we sure we should be funding that?
Mm-hmm. Okay. If I can just get Mr. Harrison to speak, I think, to the airport issue.
Well, the airport issue, what the point I was trying to make is that we're given an annual amount, and I think Councilor Wing has addressed it. We have no control. That's a totally uncontrollable issue. I mean, it'd be nice if the region took over the airport, but the reality of it is you would still get the tax because we still collect the regional taxes. So unless it's totally a break-even situation, we would end up paying for it, or property owners would end up paying for the percentage. I guess my point is that it would be very helpful for our staff to go back so that we can come back on the 14th with some specific direction. If you want us to look at advertising, we can go back and look at the advertising and say what is legislated, like for instance in the planning area or in my area with the taxation, that we have to do these advertising, and what is, if you want that driven. I mean, again, certainly we're open to any type of direction that you can. As far as the fee-for-service going, we've gone down that path 2 years in a row now. And again, every time we bring back a report, the will of council is continue to keep these things in the budget. And so, again, if we're getting a different direction, we'll gladly entertain it, and we'll do the work that will assist council in making a better decision.
Okay, thanks. Sarah? Yep.
I just want to say, if we want to keep everything in the budget, then naturally we're going to, as Councillor Thompson pointed out, end up with money problems.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Councillor Carrier?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much, Mr. Harrison, for your presentation. I know it's not an easy job, but the tough job is going to be among this table deciding what we want to put in and what we want to take out. But I appreciate all the work that you've done on it. My question is, the 2011 actual, we always show the 2011 budget and the 2012 budget, but do we have the actual as well, or is the 2011 actually the actual?
No, the 2011 is the actual budget, is the budget. We, as I've stated a couple of times, we're in the process of getting the actuals done. In the past, a couple of years ago, we gave you actuals when the process was earlier in the year, and Councillor Thompson will chide us again, as we've taken the budget earlier in the year. We would give you a prorated portion of the actual. What we're hoping to do this year is to give you the true actuals as best as we can, and they'll be available maybe for the 14th, but likely for the 28th.
Any indication that the actual varies from the budget?
Well, the actual always varies from the budget.
A lot, a small amount? Or is it too early to say?
No, I mean, in certain areas we know. Insurance, we know
Right.
that we're overspent. In the overtime, I indicated that we've spent.
I mean on the total number.
Again, we budget for a budget to break even.
Yep.
We'll break even. But the other thing is that I have a carry forward from last year about $800,000.
Well, if you're going to have it February, you answered my
Yeah.
question.
So I think it'd be very useful for council moving forward to have the actual numbers for the year.
Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll hand it back over to Mayor Diodati. Thank you, Mr. Harrison.
Do you polish it? Okay. All right, we'll start off with ratification of in camera. Ask the clerk.
A couple of items, Your Worship, excuse me, that council authorized the mayor and clerk to sign the agreement with Metrolinx regarding their participation in the new Niagara Falls Transit BTS maintenance facility on Stanley Avenue, and that council accept the revised offer from V2 Niagara Incorporated and approve the related bylaw that's later on the agenda.
Okay, Mr. Beeman?
Councilor, just an item that didn't get mentioned when we were in camera, but just something I would recommend to do on that bylaw for the V2 offer. That is just section 23 of the offer of purchase facility is a UV urea formaldehyde foam insulation representation. To sign this agreement, basically guaranteeing the building has no urea foam formaldehyde insulation in it. Well, it's very doubtful this building, the commercial building, has any in it. There's no one on staff who can advise you whether it does or it doesn't, so I'm recommending you just stroke that clause out. I don't think it would be any issue to anybody. Since it's a commercial building, it's the only one for that section really matters. This is a standard form agreement, that's the only reason why the U3 thing's even in there, but I recommend you stroke that.
Your Worship, I would move the motion for in camera with the amendment from Mr. Peter.
Okay, moved by Councillor Pietrangelo. With a conflict, Councillor Ioannoni, seconded by Councillor Morocco. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Noted exception. Okay, moving on to the bylaws. Mr. Clerk, are there any additional bylaws? Oh,
My mistake, I want to make sure that on the, no, I'm okay, I'm good. I'll do it at the back.
okay.
Thank you. My
Okay.
mistake.
Are there any additional bylaws or amendments, Mr. Clerk?
There's obviously amendments to the bylaw and one additional bylaw. We discussed the amendments to the bylaw related to Amendment 94, which were the two deferral motions, and Mr. Hurlovich pointed out the pertinent sections. And obviously the bylaw that we just mentioned to approve the agreement with V2 with the amendment that Mr. Beeman noted. So that bylaw will be 2012-08, and the confirmatory bylaw will be 2012-09.
Motion to introduce the bylaw.
Moved by Councillor Pietrangelo, seconded by Councillor Carrio to introduce the bylaws for first reading. All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Bylaws 2012-07 to 2012-09 read a first time.
Second.
Second and third reading, motion by Councillor Pietrangelo, seconded by Councillor Maves. All those in favor? Okay.
Bylaws 2012-07 to 2012-09 read a second and third time and passed.
Okay, new business, Councillor Ioannoni and Thompson and Morocco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just as your Niagara Peninsula Energy rep, I wanted to let the council know that Niagara Peninsula Energy was honored to receive the Minister of Energy, Chris Bentley, and MPP Kim Crater at the Niagara Falls Hydro office on January 19th. The meeting included our President Brian Wilkie, Jim Huntington, President of Niagara-on-the-Lake Hydro, and Janie Palmer, the Chair of Niagara Peninsula Energy. Mr. Bentley provided the opportunity to discuss the challenges and the concerns expressed by our local distribution companies and the rates. MPEI was very appreciative that Minister Bentley took time to be with us and listen to our issues and successes, particularly from a local perspective, and thank MPP Crater for arranging that. We really need him to understand how tight it's becoming, and he'd listen.
That's great. Thank you very much. Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you. I have 3 items. I'll start with one of the last council meeting. We had a small piece of property in Chippewa on Willoughby Drive. Over the years, this property has been before this council numerous times, apartments, multifamily, all kinds of different, and this time it came in, I think, with really fourplex. It was turned down, and I supported it at the time because of the concern of the family resident that appeared before council. However, this is a legitimate vacant piece of property. It's on a municipal roadway with services, and the property was turned down probably for the lowest amount of development that could take place there. And the concerns that were expressed by the residents were legitimate. However, most of them were municipal concerns. The roadway, the concern about traffic calming, the drainage, which in my opinion would be rectified with a development there. It continues on the way it is, the way it's going. And it was also mentioned about the concerns about flooding and sewer backup in Chippewa. And there even was a comment or suggestion that maybe there should be a freeze in Chippewa on development. I think that there has to be some fairness and equity in dealing with these applications, and if we are at fault, we should be bringing in a report indicating how the drainage can be rectified, how serious and what would happen with any problem with 4 condos or 4 apartments going up there, how that would impact on the sewer and water backup in Chippewa. Certainly the traffic calming, how we'd rectify that, and that bend in the road, which has been a serious problem, how we can do something as a municipality so that somebody who owns that property can come in and have a legitimate application and develop at least 4 residential developments, which was requested. And I think the enthusiasm of the presentation convinced everybody that this was legitimate. But when you really examine that situation, you have to point the finger back at the municipality and how are we going to rectify the traffic, the sewer and water, the drainage, and the other problems that were identified. So I think we deserve, and I think it's in fairness to the owner of that property, that that application at least have a report back on how we can rectify some of those problems which were identified to us, and we just turned the application down, and it's the lowest density that we've seen for that property. It was, I think, 5 stories at one time that were being suggested. So I'd make the motion we have a report back so we can be fair and equitable in these applications that are being brought forward, particularly in that particular area.
Okay, got a motion by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Wing, that we come back with a report on how we can... Yeah?
Yeah, I'm not really sure how this differs from the motions, like, I apologize, obviously, with us turning the agenda around from last week to this week. We don't have the minutes from January 24th. They'll come at the February 14th agenda. But council did pass 2 additional motions in addition to the denial of the planning application. One was to get a report back on the infrastructure pressures in Chippewa, and the second one was to get a report back on the traffic issues surrounding the curve. Okay. I mean, I think you seem to be almost going towards a reconsideration of the planning matter, and that's
No, I'm
something
not,
different.
not at all. I just think in fairness that it's a developable piece of property, and if we're coming back with a full report, that I'm satisfied with that, as long as it includes all of the concerns that were addressed by the objectors and that are municipal responsibility, so that's fine. The other one has to do with the announcement that was made a few weeks ago with respect to Toronto and a possible commercial casino there. Everybody has expressed their opinion about that and the negative impact that could be affected by this community and the job loss. We're already being impacted by casinos on the U.S. side, the passport issue. All of these things have been a real challenge to us. We have passed a resolution at Niagara Falls Tourism, at the Fallsview BIA, and also at the Convention Center with respect to this, just notifying the Premier, the Minister, and the OLG that we're concerned about employment and the negative impact on our area. And as we were going through this process, we were cautioned by some of the people who are very anxious to see the OLG follow through with a entertainment center here, and they said, do this very carefully, make sure that any studies that come out, they take into consideration the theater district in Toronto, which have been consistently opposed, and the restaurants in Toronto opposed to a large commercial casino. Hopefully that's going to be a major factor in the consideration of what's happening over there, but certainly our concerns here have to deal with the whole destination here, particularly jobs and the opportunity. So there's been a couple of letters that have been crafted indicating we're very much in favor of having the entertainment facility be favorably considered for our community to go with the casino in Niagara Falls, but we have grave concerns with respect to the negative impact that would happen. And I would suggest that the clerk contact the other tourism agencies and craft an appropriate resolution to send on, including the need for the entertainment facility there. And I would so move that.
Okay. Got a motion by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Wing. Councillor Kerrio?
What are we asking for? We're asking for the government to do?
Just expressing our concern about the negative aspects of a commercial casino.
Friendly amendment to maybe a friendly amendment if would. I think that the least that they should do for us, the government should do a financial impact study. A financial impact study should be included with anything that they do to look at another casino in Toronto, a financial impact study on our casinos.
I think they're doing that. That's
I'm not
part
sure
of
they
the,
are, but I think that we should
well,
make sure that.
I don't mind.
And it should be one that could be made public, so that's something that we can look at, not something that they decide to do that we don't get a sniff at.
Yeah. Well, I have no problem with that, but I think my inquiries have been that they're doing a full economic impact and study on how this would impact the entire province and casinos in general.
Okay, so got a motion by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Wing, the friendly amendment from Councillor Kerrio. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous.
The last thing is probably the most concerning. Has to do with the announcement about a hospital, a second hospital in the south end of the city. And I've tried to monitor and keep out of the day-to-day debate and let Mr. Smith carry out his responsibilities, unlike Mr. Kitts, who was examining the HIP program. But Dean Irafita and I go back to 2000 when we started sending correspondence to the region and to every other agency that had anything to do with hospital restructuring. And we certainly agreed with the central location of a super hospital somewhere in the area of between Brock University and Turner's Corners, that everybody would buy into a large super hospital which would certainly have a connection with McMaster University, be a teaching hospital. We all agreed to that. Somewhere along the line, we got off onto a tangent where they got some donated land, supposedly in St. Catharines, which turns out to be $4 million. And then it was in an isolated area in St. Catharines, and it was just going to be a St. Catharines hospital. And then they got cancer treatment, and they got heart, and then they were going to go into pediatrics and maternity. And so all of a sudden, the super hospital we wanted, conveniently located for everybody to take advantage of, was off into the outskirts of St. Catharines and very difficult to anybody to access. Certainly, I have to give credit to Fort Erie and the mayor and Port Colborne for all their efforts about attempting to get proper health services in their hospitals in their area, which they've been deprived of, and we've seen the negative aspects of that over the last little while. When I opened the paper this last week and I saw that there could be a second hospital to serve the south part of the city, I was not very optimistic that that was going to be located within our boundaries. Certainly, I'm very concerned, along with a lot of other people who have expressed their opinion to me, that it may be, in fact, in the south end of the city, but certainly would have a very negative impact on our hospital here. And as you know, with the services that are being moved to St. Catharines, there's even concern what we're going to be left with the HIP program here in the city of Niagara Falls. We're the second largest population. We deserve proper medical care, and so do the people at the south of the city. But I am really concerned that we have to be extremely vocal and involved, and we have to make sure that we're not going to get the short end of the stick with this, because that's entirely possible. I know that you've had discussions with Dr. Smith, but we had an extremely active council and citizen committee. As you know, you were involved before, and I think that we should reactivate that. We had some very astute people with Nancy Reynolds-Ite, Janie Palmer, Bill Haskin, pardon me? Bob Gale, who were very concerned and knowledgeable citizens who were involved in that. I'd like to see that reactivated, and any member of council who would like to sit on that. I know Councilor Gates has brought this up almost on a regular basis at the council meeting, and I'm sure he has an interest in something like this on this committee. But I think we really have to monitor this. I think we have to be vocal, and I have to believe that when they start thinking of a second hospital, the city of Niagara Falls, I have some grave concerns about it, and I think we have to be very proactive and make sure they know our concerns, where we stand, and fight for proper health care at our hospital, at this location where we are now. So I hope everybody else has the same concern about this announcement, and I have no criticism of Mr. Smith, but when I see them after everybody makes motions around this table about getting rid of the NHS, about getting rid of the LHINs, and then they just give the LHINs more power to deal with doctors' salaries directly. And so everything we're suggesting that they do, have proper representation, elected representation, or local representation. In my opinion, they should go back to local hospital boards so that our interests are looked at directly. So this is a huge issue for us, and I think we really have to be on our toes. I'd like to see this committee reestablished and report back to council on a regular basis. So those are my comments, and I think they're generally felt by most of the people in the community.
Yeah, that's great comments, and I think that's a welcome idea. Anyone on this council that want to be a part of that committee, because there's no question, Councillor, our discussions at the region, and it's funny, earlier we were talking about population forecast growth for the region, and by far Niagara Falls is the fastest growing city. And when you look at the demographic center, it's already in Niagara Falls of the region. It's going to be driven further this way with the growth over the next 30 years to 2031. So no question about it, but you're right, now it's a political thing, and we need to step it up, and we got some heavy members of the community that'll help us to ensure that. And then, of course, the other factor is the millions of tourists that come here. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why we deserve to certainly have something here in our area. Councillor Wing.
Yes, I share Councillor Thompson's and your concerns. And, you know, the one thing that keeps coming to mind for me is why Dr. Smith is talking about splitting the region on a horizontal north-south kind of axis. You know, that's the longer axis. Why not split it up and down, like on a vertical axis, and deal with it instead of as north-south, as west and east? Like the west is very well served. There's 2 hospitals there already. There's the New St. Catherine's Hospital, and there's the one in Grimsby. And when I lived in Grimsby, that's the one I used. So they've got 2 hospitals in the west. What about the east, where we have all this population, all the tourists who come here, who come to Niagara Lake? It's the east we really need to watch out for and make sure that we have a hospital located in the east, where most of the people are going to be in the future. So if this committee reestablishes, I'd be happy to be part of it as well, because the other thing I really would like to see is going back to local decision-making. That's when things really went awry, is when the local decision-making was taken away and centralized in the hands of some very remote and distant kind of bodies. So I would like to see that change as well.
Any other comment? Yeah, Councillor Gates.
Actually, I was going to save it to new business when it got around to me, but seeing it was brought up, obviously there's been a lot of talk and a lot of your comments, Mayor Diodati, on the hospital, and I have a lot of the concerns that Councillor Thompson has on location, but I have more of a concern on the quality of health care that we're getting today. The hospital's not going to be built for 5-7 years. We had put a motion for it on October 24th, asking Dr. Smith and the NHS to honor the memorandum of understanding, to review and promise to the Minister of Health to review the hospital improvement plan. And I've been very outspoken on this, along with a lot of other people. I believe if we want to fix health care in Niagara, again, that is a living document that's not sitting on a table somewhere or on a shelf somewhere. That's a living document. They continue to implement the hospital improvement plan, even though I believe, and I think a lot of other people believe, the reason why we're in the healthcare mess we're in today is because of the hospital improvement plan. So I'm asking, and I know that you had a conference call. I thought you had a meeting, but my understanding it was a conference call. I would like to know if they have sent anything back on that. As far as the hospital goes, wherever it's going to go, it's years away. Today, they announced that the LHINs are going to have more power. An unelected body that makes absolutely no sense, that have caused the problems of healthcare, made terrible, terrible decisions on behalf of Ontario residents. But I think the biggest thing for me is we can talk about the hospital on a go-for-it basis. We can be vocal. We can start committees. But if we're going to improve healthcare immediately, we have to continue to talk about the hospital improvement plan. And the new hospital in St. Catharines, I mean, we can talk about the location of that hospital was a mistake in the first place, but the reality is that the number of beds that are in the hospital today is inadequate for what the day it opens, and they know that. So that's another concern, obviously, that should be in that thing. But my big thing is we can't move forward with a new hospital until we fix the problems that we've had in the past. Let's fix them. Talk about health care. We still got all the problems that we've had for the last number of while. I'm not sure if it's a trial balloon or whatever he's trying to do to get off the hip. I'm not trying to run down Dr. Smith at all. He's got a job to do. He's been appointed by the government. I respect that. But I wish that he'd live and answer this particular motion that was done by the council on October 24th, that he will commit to doing the review of the HIP, because that's the most important thing as we move forward to get health care in Niagara, and then we'll worry about the hospital later. Thanks very much. I appreciate the time on that, too.
Thank you, Councillor. And when did we actually send that out, Mr. Clerk? Do you recall?
Yeah, first week in November.
First week in November, okay. So we can follow up on that this week and find out where that's at?
I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll do that. Is there any other new business?
I have
Oh,
one.
oh,
One thing I-
okay, I got Councillor Morocco and then Councillor Gates, yeah.
It's all about healthcare. Thank you, Mayor Diodati. And thank you for bringing that up. Actually, I was interviewed yesterday, too, just to that point quickly, as well as Mrs. Wallace, and neither one of us had even communicated, but yet we both said the same thing. Great for a new hospital, no doubts about that, if that's where they're going, but they better get the service and providing the health care that we need right first. We can go on about that, and that was just on a personal basis. But I'd like to bring forward a motion to council as a resolution that we send a support letter on behalf of the board of the Niagara Falls Community Health Center, is asking Niagara Falls City Council to support a request for capital funding from the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care to complete our move to a permanent site. In 2007, the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care made a commitment to the people of Niagara Falls to establish a community health center with sustainable budget and a permanent site. We have the budget, but are in an interim site which lacks space to bring the health and community services funded and required by the LHIN and the ministry to our clients. The community health center has doctors, nurse practitioners, social workers, RNs, health promoters, as well as administrative staff for a client base of just over 2,000. So anyway, it goes into a little bit more detail, but I have been lobbying this for a while. The problem is now they did promise the 5 centers were one of the 5 centers throughout the province of Ontario that were grandfathered in, and now there's some doubt coming into the budget that that might not happen. So we do have the Association of Ontario Health Centers that are lobbying for us. This was a commitment that was made, so we're just asking that the council, and yes, I am the chair, and I have Rennie Pichitala here too, is one of our directors, that's hoping that we can just get this support from council to ask the Premier to support for a permanent site, which is going to be, I'm sure everyone is aware of, the old Canadian Tire building, which will be a lot nicer site in addition to the service. But there are so many services that we can't provide because we're in such a small location. So you can imagine over 2,000 in just a year and a half. So I would ask the support of council.
Okay, a motion by Councillor Morocco, seconded by Councillor Iannoni. Discussion to the motion? Okay, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Rennie, for being here too. And Councillor Gates.
Thanks, Mayor Diodati. Just real quick, I just want to make sure that it's recorded, and I said it in council, I talked about it in camera, that I voted against the selling of the Memorial Arena for the amount that it was sold for. So I just wanted to make sure that was recorded.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, like to comment to that?
Yeah, just for the new member of council, if you vote against something downstairs, you have to mention it upstairs. It doesn't automatically come up, and we appreciate you stating that.
And downstairs, meeting in camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. Councillor Wing?
I'm wondering if staff can advise whether there's been any feedback from people who live on the streets that were put back on the sidewalk snowplow route last week.
We did in our office. You just- We didn't really get a heck of a lot of snow, right? It was kind of... What? Oh, yes, Mr. Clerk?
Well, I know that Ms. Tiki was sending out some letters. I don't know if they have been sent out yet, so maybe if they haven't been received yet, we may not have gotten any feedback yet.
Actually, I was asking because I spoke with her myself yesterday. She said she had. I know there's 3 properties on Barker that objected to being back on the list. I was advised that Barker went back on the list because of one objection to being taken off, and the objection came from somebody who doesn't even live on the street. So we've set a whole new standard for which streets will plow in the city based on an objection from a person who doesn't even live on the street in question. So I really think we need to rectify this, because I understand from speaking with her, there's people on other streets that are like Barker, strictly residential, and they would like to have their streets plowed, because you have elderly people having to walk on the streets when their neighbors haven't cleared the sidewalks. So now that we have a new standard, either we're going to have to put a lot of money in the budget and clear every street where there's somebody who finds it difficult to get along the sidewalk in the winter, or we're going to need to adhere to the standards that are, well, what we already have as our policy.
Well, and you're right, Councillor, on your street, on Barker Street, Battlefield closed, so that definitely changed the situation, since there's no school kids that'll be going to the school. So definitely changes things. So I don't know, did you want to make a motion on Barker?
I'd be happy to make a motion to take it back off. I understand there was feedback from residents on the other streets that were added back on. I understand there was feedback from some residents on the other streets which were added back on. But I know that from speaking with Ms. Tiki, Barker was added back on the strength of one complaint from someone who does not even live on Barker Street. So,
Okay, we had two, and it had the Barker Street address, so I mean, I don't know.
okay, I'm hearing something different from her, but
But
I know
regardless.
that there's at least 3 properties objecting to be back,
And I'm
being
familiar
back
with
on the
those
list,
properties,
so, 3 beats 2.
Well, if you'd like to make that motion.
Yeah.
Okay, motion by Councillor Wing to put Barker back on. Second, to take it back off, rather. Back on the remove list, but okay, take it off the plow list. Do we have a seconder to Councillor Wing's motion? Okay, second by Councillor Ioannoni. Is there any discussion, Councillor Thompson?
Well, I don't have any problem taking it off, but I don't want to be going back and forth every other week, somebody else coming in and saying, well, there's 5 of us that want it on, here's 6 that don't, and is there some method we can determine with a survey, flyers up and down the street, if they want to get a consensus of the people there and go with the majority? If the majority don't want it, I just don't want to come back here in 2 weeks and say, well, we've got 5 people in a petition and want to put it and change it back again. I don't mind the motion, but I just don't want to be fooling around back and forth.
Councillor Wing?
The other point is there is nothing which separates Barker from most of the other streets in the city. We have a policy that we provide sidewalk snow plowing where it's a business district or there's a school or a nursing home, and I can't remember what the other criteria are. But there's certain criteria that have to be met before we send a sidewalk plow up that street. Barker does not meet any of those criteria. So if Barker doesn't meet the criteria and gets a sidewalk snow plow, then any other street that doesn't meet the criteria but whose residents express the need for a sidewalk snow plow should get the same treatment. We should have a standard that applies equally to all.
Okay, was there any other discussion on the motion?
What's the motion?
What happens next week when somebody else comes on?
Councillor, did you want to start with sending it to staff first, Councillor, on Barker Street, or did you want to, how did you want to do it?
It came from staff originally. They recommended taking, several routes off the sidewalk snowplow route to use resources most efficiently and effectively and adhere to the policies that we have in place. We followed their recommendations, and then last week they were undone partially. I'm saying like...
Okay, why don't we do this then? And Councillor's right, staff did originally recommend removing it from the plow list. So we've got a motion to remove just Barker Street from the plow list. Why don't we...
Send it to staff, I'll amend it.
Send it to staff for removal. Okay, we got a motion on the floor. For removal from the plowing. Right, removal from the plowing.
And look at the other streets too, and
Let's stick with this one for now, Councillor. We're going to be here all night talking about Barker Street. All right, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, done. Yeah, any other new business? Okay, moved by adjournment, Councillor Ioannoni, second by Councillor Kerrio. All those in favor? Thank you.